History, loyalty, family. That is the fabric of any football club. These three pillars define the organisation, setting the path and giving purpose.
You've got to inspire me.
These young men have grown up in these surroundings. It's part of their identity. It's in their makeup, in their blood.
Old man, look at my life. I'm a lot like...
Sons of famous fathers. Brothers battling it out in the backyard.
King strong march.
Teammates and friends who will become foes on their respective AFL journeys.
What a class act Dominic Sheed is.
Sheed from the boundary. Needs to be in perfect ears.
It's time for the next generation to forge their own path, away from the shadows of their fathers.
The son of a gun with a special moment. What a goal, Oscar Brownless.
And it's up to the clubs to invest in the three pillars and nurture that which defines them all. Family.
Look in my eyes and you can tell that's true.
Welcome to day 2 of the AFL, NAB AFL draft from Marvel Stadium. Yesterday we saw Sam Walsh picked up by the Carlton Football Club with pick 1. A Rolls Royce, a superstar in the making, and the Blues will be very happy with that selection there. Patrick Cripps and Sam Doherty on stage. Marvel Stadium was the venue yesterday. Marvel Stadium again is the venue today, and it promises to be an absolute ripper. 22 selections yesterday. The rest today, lots of dreams will be made. Mick Ablett and Kevin Sheen, welcome to the coverage. We'll have everything covered for you today on Fox Footy, of course, over the next couple of hours. Let's talk about yesterday first. Any big surprises for you, Kevin?
Well, I love the fact that the live trading worked. We had it for the first time with 5 minutes between picks, and clubs, of course, up in their war rooms and negotiating with each other, and a deal was done. Carlton and Adelaide got together, which resulted, of course, in at choice 19, Liam Stocker becoming a Blue.
Let's have a look at that round 1 there, Mick. Probably Walsh, Lukosius, Rankin and King were fairly expected, but then there was a few curveballs after that.
Yeah, there was. Great to see Taron Thomas get bid on at pick 8, as you can see on screen there. That's fair value for him. He's an outstanding prospect. And Nick Blakey probably got out a little bit further than what we expected, but I think overall everything pretty much went to plan.
Let's talk about that Adelaide and Carlton trade you just mentioned, Kevin. Liam Stocker was the beneficiary. He ended up at the Blues, a very talented young player. Can you explain to us exactly what happened and why it's made news overnight and this morning?
Yeah, look, I think it's a great move by Stephen Silvani and the list management crew. So Carlton have traded up to pick 19 to get Liam Stocker and then swapped future first-round picks with the Crows for 2019. So what that effectively is saying is the Crows see the value in, they'd be assuming that Carlton are going to finish maybe in that bottom 4 or 5 in the ladder next year and get a real high-end pick in 2019. And the Blues have been able to pounce now and get their man.
And Stocker ready to run. That's what they see. He's the boy that won the Morris Medal, the best and fairest player in the TAC Cup here in Victoria. They've got Sam Walsh that won the best and fairest player, the Lark Medal in the National Championship. They've got 2 ready-to-run midfielders, and Stocker should be an asset right from the start.
And certainly a bold move by the Carlton Football Club. Sarah Ollie from foxfooty.com.au. She was out at Marvel Stadium yesterday. She's there today as well, and she's got Kinnear Beatson from the Sydney Swans with her.
So, Kinnear, is it fair to say it was pandemonium in the box last night with all the live trades, lots of calls being made?
Yeah, it was, Sarah. It got really busy. I must admit I went into last night a bit sceptical about how busy it was going to be with the ability to trade picks during the draft. But, yeah, it was full on last night. Even after we did the deal with West Coast, from then on there was a lot of conversations about trying to get further forward in the draft by a lot of clubs.
And on West Coast, you did a few trades with them. Can you tell us when you identified you were going to do those trades and at what point you made contact with the Eagles?
It was yesterday afternoon that we came up with the idea that it might be worthwhile approaching West Coast. And then when we spoke to them and it became a live option, then we had to work out how the mechanics work where we could actually keep pick 22 and use it in the draft. Because if we'd gone ahead with that prior to the bid for Nick, that pick would have been absorbed in matching the bid, if that made any point. So we discussed it with the AFL and they said, yes, you're able to produce it in 2 separate deals. So that's how it went ahead. And so now we've got pick 25 this morning in the draft, and that's exciting for us.
Yeah, so on the machinations and how it works, David King said last night in the coverage that some clubs clearly had a better grasp of how to manipulate the rules. You have a bit of a spring in your step this morning, Kinnear, knowing that you got Nick Blakey quite cheaply in the end.
Well, the other clubs determine the market value of the players, Sarah. I mean, that's not up to us. They elected to wait till, I think it was selection 9, was it, that the pick came through? I mean, we were pleased with that. I think I'm on record as saying that we thought the bid would be anywhere from 4 to 10. Mm-hmm. That's where it fell. So, yeah, where, you never know. But, yeah, we were happy with that because it's given us some good picks for today.
Well, best of luck with today.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, thank you very much to Sarah Ollie and Kinnear Beatson from the Swans. What is your take on that, Mick? Because it's caused a bit of controversy. Yeah,
it has, but let's start off. I mean, Kinnear Beatson is a very astute recruiting manager and done a fantastic job. At the end of the day, and what he touched on then, was there were a number of clubs, Tom, that had the opportunity to bid on Nick Blakey early in the piece and overlooked him. So that's probably the more pertinent question, is why?
And let's talk about who is left in the draft. Kevin, there must be some gems still to come.
There's plenty to come. Luke Valenti's one that I like, an All-Australian vice-captain, in fact, the MVP for SA when they won the National Championship this year, boy from Norwood. And Curtis Taylor, a mercurial type from the Calder Cannons, a goal kicker, about 187, can really mark the ball and can change games the way he plays up forward.
And we're going to start off with pick 23 from the West Coast Eagles. Now, watch AFL. This is an unbelievable product. I actually had it earlier this year. I'll get it on screen just there. We've got the perfect Christmas gift for you. I used it in Europe. I'm sure you guys have used it overseas as well. It's the Watch AFL Christmas box. It includes a 12-month pass to stream every match live or on demand from outside Australia, plus game day snacks. Go to downunderbox.com.au for all the details, but don't leave it too late and miss the Christmas delivery window. That's an absolute ripper. I tell you, who else is a ripper? Jared Cameron. He is the brother, of course, of the Brisbane goal sneak, and hopefully he can join him in the AFL ranks this year.
Long ball deep inside 50. Guts, and what a mark over the top. Will it be paid to Cameron? Got up so high.
Jeez, that was a big leap.
Yeah, I reckon we got similar traits. He gets fired up pretty easy. When we were little kids, yeah, used to get him going. Just get stuck into him. Yeah, just annoy him.
Cameron has a bit of space in front of him. Cameron makes a statement on the big stage.
A few times he got me, real good ones. Me crying, probably just walk away. Mum telling him off.
How about that? Jared Cameron.
Come across him, I have to give him one.
Back to Charlie, spins out of a tackle, kicks toward goal, and Charlie's on the money.
Gonna bring my bubble gum, blowing up my cranium. Oh my God, what have I done? All I wanted was...
We're not far away from round 2 getting underway at the NAB AFL draft at Marvel Stadium. West Coast rooms there, they're full of chat and action, I would imagine, Mick, because there's a few words coming out of Marvel Stadium that the Gold Coast might want to trade up to get pick 23, which is, of course, the compensation pick the Eagles got for Scott Lysette.
Yeah, they don't do things by halves, the Eagles, either do they? Trevor Nisbet sitting in the room there overseeing the group. But look, it just goes to show the amount of depth in the draft and the talent still on the board. So this is the beauty of a 2-day draft where they've had time to think about it overnight and they're going and really targeting what they're after. We saw it with Carlton late last night. It looks like the Gold Coast could be ready to move on another player.
He's on the phone as well there, Kevin.
Yeah, the beauty of this is that all the clubs will probably have a similar list of players on a board, but in a different order. So there will be a club down the track that's saying, I can't believe this player that they may have ranked in the top 10 or 15 in their view is still here. And they want to get up and get that guy now before someone else grabs him. So that's the beauty of it, and that's why there'll be a bit of a discussion today in those war rooms.
So who is that guy? Is it Valenti? Is it a player like that? It could be anyone, because we know that Ian Hill's still available as well, potentially.
Yeah, and it might be the fact that if it's a Valenti, it might be about leadership. You want a good young player to come in that successfully captained SA to a national championship this year. So you can believe that it could be a guy like that. He's an inside mid, a great distributor of the footy. He's a bit of Sam Mitchell about him in the way he's able to exit the stoppage, right or left, hand or foot. He's really worked on his game and would be great with a young group.
Well, it looks as if a trade is in. West Coast have hung up the phone. The Gold Coast were just on the phone as well. And Steve Hocking has picked 23.
Welcome back to day 2 of the NAB AFL draft.
Yes, I did, but I just have to give this to Hock.
So number 1 here?
4.
4, sorry. Gold Coast Suns trades pick 27 and 32 to West Coast Eagles for pick 23 and 2019 future 5th round selection.
Well, Mick, future 27, 32, 23 and 2019 5th round selection. Clearly the Gold Coast trying to get up to get the player they want.
Yeah, well, the player as you see on screen there, the player they have selected is Jez McLennan. So they've gone for another South Australian there. He was an All-Australian under-18 player and a brilliant counter-attacking medium-sized defender. So they've obviously seen the value in Jez McLennan. They've obviously picked up Isaac Rankin and Jack Lukosius overnight and really trying to build that culture and core group of players that may stick around on the Gold Coast for an extended period.
McLennan, a great intercept marker. You love the boys that really see the ball, get the ball in the air, intercept mark right through those championships. An All-Australian, as Mick mentioned there, so a great performer as well. I love the kids that perform rather than have potential. At some point you've got to realise that potential, and so I love the kids that make All-Australian honours in their given year.
And what a way to start off day 2 as well with a live trade. This is the beauty of this. We know the phones were running hot yesterday. Adelaide is next up with pick 24. They'll be deliberating what they're want to do now. They had a busy day yesterday, of course. But what do you make of the Gold Coast Suns? Because they've been busy as well, Mick.
Yeah, they have. And like we spoke about, it's a targeted approach. So they really need to establish some players that do have some synergy and have previously played together in the hope of keeping them in that environment for longer. And Jez McLennan's got the ability to play on multiple different types of opponents as well. And
the Adelaide Crows have put their pick in, pick number 24, that is. And they're just about ready to go with Steve Hocking, not quite yet. The Crows themselves, they're an interesting case as well. And who do you see potentially that could go with this number, pick number 24?
Well, they addressed their need for run and speed with Chase Jones and Ned McHenry last night. So it's going to be interesting now. Do they start to look to more the positional types and the periphery type of players? Do they go for a tall? We haven't really seen a key defender. You got obviously a ruckman that has got to be around the mix. Do they look for a backup for Sam Jacobs? We understand they got Riley O'Brien sitting there, but do they need a backup ruckman?
Kevin, what are your thoughts? Because it's a difficult one. Sam Jacobs is still a good player, but he's not as young as he once was, obviously.
Yeah, well, Kieran Briggs is your next best ruck. We talked about Bailey Williams. They're the two that really can play the ruck role. Briggs is, of course, a Giants Academy boy, but a big body. He's ready to run. He's Shane Mumford. He's 200 centimetres and about 100 kilos and had a wonderful year. Allies most valuable player, and he won that same award as the most valuable for the Giants.
And there's been a trade to the Giants, have picked 24 now with Steve Hocking.
Pick 23, Gold Coast Suns select Jez McLennan.
Well, that's the one we were talking about before. Jez McLennan is the defender you were talking about to the Gold Coast Suns, and that trade we were talking about, the GWS Giants now with pick 24.
Yep, well, again, this is amazing, and this is exactly what we expected to happen, and this is the beauty of live trading.
And Steve Hocking has pick 24 now.
Pick 24, can you publish but don't approve? Publish?
I don't have it here. Pick 24.
Publish, publish, publish.
Craig Cameron, of course, head of list management.
GWS Giants has selected Ian Hill from Perth.
Well, there you go. The human highlight reel, Ian Hill.
What's his nickname, Kevin?
Bobby, but look, he is a star performer. He's got all the tricks in the book. You can't corral him. He's one of those boys with great agility, the change of direction, whether that's through the midfield or whether it's in the air as well or around goal. He's an exciting prospect. Mick, you've seen a bit of him in WA.
Yeah, look, he's certainly slipped down the draft board. There was no doubt about that, but he's the closest thing I've seen to Cyril Rioli in my time in talent.
It's a big call.
Like it is a big call, but he's an absolute star, this kid. And you put Toby Green and Ian Hill in the same forward line, and I know there'll be some very, very nervous medium and small opposition defenders.
I just wonder whether West Coast didn't want another similar type player. They've already got a couple of these, Mick and Kevin. Although he's talented, how many can you have on the one list?
Well, I think you'd have 3 or 4 now. Yeah. The Tigers proved that. The Western Bulldogs did as well. But you see him in action here. He's got blistering speed. A star. It's been interrupted a little bit. He got a suspension this year for a dangerous tackle. He had a shoulder injury. But, gee, in his 17th year and his 16th year, he's the best kid in WA.
Yeah, he had the shoulder recco, so he's missed a lot of football this year, re-injured it again late in the year. But I'm a great believer. I've said this about guys like Sam Petrevski-Seton, Darcy Fogarty that don't have great 18th years. You don't lose your talent, Tom, and this kid has got more ability in his little finger than probably 90% of other players.
And, of course, his nickname is Bob because he loved Bob the Builder as a kid. Pick 25 with the Sydney Swans now.
Pick 25. Sydney Swans have selected James Rowbottom from the Oakley Chargers.
Well, you've picked an inside mid again. In fact, Brian Taylor's nephew, this young fellow that played for Vic Metro, contested ball winner, can play run with rolls, prolific ball winner, and most of all, I love the boys that get the head over the footy. It's still pretty basic. Get your head over the ball, win the ball in a contest, and use it smartly. And Rowbottom can certainly do that.
And a bit of a bolter as well.
Oh, look, I don't necessarily consider him to be too much of a bolter. You see his numbers, his lab ranking and his numbers on page there, and it's his ability to compete and win at the stoppage, to actually set up from there, create the clearances and really generate that drive in tight. So, look, he's a promising type, Rowbottom, and the Swans just continuing to add some depth in the midfield.
Yeah, they lost Dan Hanbury. They've picked him up now. I'm interested to what Melbourne are going to do here. Welcome to them to the draft. They haven't really had an impact. Well, they haven't had any impact so far at all. Of course, we know they had a big trade period. They're looking for a half-back flanker, I read this morning, but is it just best available, Mick, as well?
You have to take best available. There's no doubt about that. The time's now for Melbourne, in my opinion. Everybody's spoken about, geez, they're close. Geez, they're a premiership threat. Well, they've got to put the final pieces together, and Jason Taylor and Tim Lamb have been outstanding, along with Josh Marnie, over the last few years in building what is really starting to come together as a powerful football club and an exciting list. They add Stephen May in there. I just think they've got to go best player now and continue to bolster their list.
Oh, well, who is that best player then, Kevin? It's a tough one, isn't it? Valenti's still there, we saw on the side of the screen.
I reckon there's plenty. There's plenty of good players. One a bit maybe now or a bit later. Tom McKenzie's one that interests me. That played a great game on the MCG when the two Vics met, and he's a boy that'll come off back flank. His use of the ball and his speed are his great assets, and he's a boy that may well slip through a wee bit further. But I could see him playing some AFL in the future.
And from a list management perspective, Mick, what do they need to fill? Because it seems like they've got a lot of bases covered, the Demons, at the moment.
Yeah, you just wonder whether they're in the market for a small forward. Did it throw things out a little bit? Were they expecting to get Ian Hill? But that running defender, I mean, those guys that Kev just mentioned, like a Tom McKenzie, I think Christian Salem and the like, that can also roll through the midfield. Someone like Tom McKenzie could do that. And you look at the damage of someone like a Michael Hibberd, what he can do, Heath Shaw. And I think the Melbourne Footy Club, like I said, although they've got to pick best player, they'll certainly be starting to look for need at this point in the draft.
Oh, well, let's welcome the Melbourne Demons to the NAB AFL draft with pick 26.
They've put the bid in by the look of it, Tom, on Riley West. So we knew it wouldn't be too far away.
And Riley West, son of Scott West, of course, 7-time best and fairest at the Western Bulldogs. And why wouldn't you make the Bulldogs pay a bit if that's the case? He's an All-Australian West this year as a youngster. So he's an angry little fella too. He's a competitive beast, you'd call him that. Just loves the contest. He's very physical and... well, he's got elite agility too, that beautiful step to get out of that tight situation, and had a great year. Another All-Australian, another great performer at underage level this year.
But do you think it's where the Western Bulldogs will have to say, yep, we really want him now? It's about where we probably expected him to go, or is he a bit higher or lower than you thought, Mick?
Well, if you look on screen there, they're not actually giving up too much, are they, to be honest? So I think this is a no-brainer for the Western Bulldogs to really add to the culture of their footy club. I still love the romance of the father-son, so I think it'd be great to see Riley run around. And as Kev mentioned, look, his record speaks for itself. He's a really tough inside clearance expert, and he probably just adds another dimension. Now, he's going to have some work to do to push in. I know Brad Johnson mentioned last night ahead of the likes of Tom Liberatore and Mitch Wallace. Maybe he does start off as that defensive forward at some stage and from there work his way into the midfield.
Let's find out what the Dogs do right now.
So they can replace them.
There's been a trade we can see between Freo and the Western Bulldogs. We've got to wrap our heads around this pretty quickly, Mick and Kevin.
It's basically a shuffling of
Yeah,
picks,
it is.
isn't it? It doesn't look to be anything really stand out or dramatic in those sorts of trades. It'll obviously see the Western Bulldogs move up a little bit in the order and gain pick 34 and 41 from Freo, and Freo obviously slide up and actually gain, a few spots ahead in 30. So nothing too substantial in that trade, I wouldn't have thought, and it looks like Riley West will make his way to the Bulldogs.
Yeah, it's just gathering a few points so that they can have less impact by taking Riley West at this point.
Steve Hocking's ready to go.
Pick 26, Western Bulldogs have matched Melbourne's bid for Riley West from Calder Cannons.
Well, as expected, that's what we're just talking about. Riley West is there. Why do they have to get a trade done first to get that done, Mick? I think that's what probably a lot of people are asking. They wanted Riley West, they could get him, but they did a trade with Freo in order to get more points.
Yeah, so as Kev touched on, it's just the ability to maintain your spot within the draft and try and shift up a little bit and still get access to the next best player and without sliding too far down. But as we see here on screen, he's just a very, very smart, tough operator, strong through the core. That's what I love about Riley West. He can absorb contact and still stay on his feet. So he's not too dissimilar to the dad.
Right-footed though?
Yes. He is a right footer.
Yeah, that's one particular difference. A bit more pace maybe, although Scott West, we can't speak too critically about him. He's a 7-time All-Australian. Yeah. No, he looks like a very good young player, Riley West, and it's terrific, as you said, to see the Bulldogs pick him up. We're waiting on the Ds now again for pick 27, so they've just delayed their entry into the draft. They, of course, bid on Riley West, and he was picked up by the Western Bulldogs, it seems. The bid was matched.
Yeah, another mention on screen there. We see Sam Power, so brother of Luke Power, the Brisbane Lions superstar, and Sam, an excellent player in his own right. He's a very, very intelligent young man, Sam, and someone that will be well and truly across all this future trading.
No, he's doing a good job at the Dogs, that's for sure. He's picked up Riley West, and now Melbourne are ready
Pick
to make their
27,
selection. Pick
Melbourne
27.
have selected Thomas Sparrow from South Adelaide.
Thomas Sparrow, Kevin, South Adelaide.
Yeah, and another contested ball winner. Love the way he goes about it. Not dissimilar to Riley West. He can find space when there's not much space. So he's got that elite move out of traffic to get away, to burst away. A boy from South Adelaide, seen him play in their Colts Grand Final. Also a good player playing half forward and midfield for SA and their championship winning team. Boy about the 6 foot mark, 183 centimetres, and I think he's got tremendous upside. His sprint was quite solid at the draft combine, but it's his endurance that really was outstanding. He was up in the top 10% with his endurance performance.
Yeah, and they've had some real success over recent times in Melbourne Footy Club with the South Australians. I think of a guy like Alex Neil-Bullen, who they probably picked up a little bit later in the draft than what they've got Tom Sparrow. But, if we look at the ticks down the bottom there, his stoppage work, tackling, the mail I got, Tom, early in the piece was that he was someone that could get up the board and be a really attractive player.
Steve Hocking has picked 28 with the West Coast Eagles.
28, West Coast Eagles have selected Xavier O'Neill from Oakley Chargers.
Yeah, terrific that Xavier has got his chance. A boy from the Oakley Chargers that didn't play national championships, so must remember that some boys will just come on later in the year, so he didn't get picked in that Vic Metro side. It's hard to get in, but his form with Oakley coming right through to the grand final was impressive. He's got breakaway speed from centre bounce. I think that's his X factor. He had a very consistent year, averaging close to 20 possessions a game. So it's been a real midfield push through the last 3 choices, and Xavier O'Neill certainly offers that.
Yeah, and you mentioned his athleticism, Kev. He's got that outstanding balance of speed, endurance. He's tested 2.96 seconds over 20 metres, which put him in the top 10% at the combine, and then he's the top 22% when it came to the 2K time trial. So they've clearly gone for speed, and you look at Jack Petrocelli last year, he only adds to that.
Next pick is in. We've got a bid now from Collingwood, so... Well, the Crows, Will Kelly, this is the man, Jake Kelly's brother, son of Craig Kelly, the 1990 Premiership player and also a very famous player-manager. Was this expected?
I think it's about the right mark. He's really emerged well this year. Of course, A bit bigger than his brother, Jake, a bit bigger than Craig, the father, too. He's about the 196 centimetres, Will. Love the way he gets over the ground for a boy of that size. And in Nationals this year, his use of the ball on the way out was excellent. I thought even his choices and when to mark, when to spoil was good. And he grew in confidence as the year went on. He matched up against the best tall forwards in Nationals from around Australia and competed very, very well. So I think it's a must match for the Pies.
Cheeky by the Crows.
Yeah, I love this. You look at Hamish Ogilvie, he just does not miss a beat, does he, when he bids on these players?
No, it's very good to see. And he was there last night as well, Will Kelly. Here we go.
Pick 29, Collingwood have matched Adelaide Crows' bid for Will Kelly from Oakleigh Chargers.
They just had to, didn't they?
Well, they did. And you think with Will Kelly, just for the listeners out there, you think of Jake Lever, Tom Barrass type with this young fella. He has got the ability to come off and take intercept marks and really, really made his mark as the year continued to progress. So a no-brainer for mine. They'll get Ben Reid back as well next year, so they're starting to shore up their defence nicely.
Oh, it's good to see father-sons, and there's plenty of them in this year's draft, Kevin, isn't there? They seem to be taking almost every 5 picks at the moment.
Well, we love the bloodlines, don't we? And, yeah, I think Next Generation Academy, father-sons, might be a dozen in total taken through this draft, all with links to clubs. I think that's important. Right back from Ron Barassi near the first of the father-sons, way over 50 years ago.
Going back, and the father-son rules have changed almost, or quite consistently since then, haven't they? We've got the Adelaide Crows, who now will have to make their own selection. Of course, they missed out on Will Kelly after trying to get him alongside Jake Kelly, his brother, who currently does play at the Crows. And their pick is in.
Pick 30, Adelaide Crows have selected William Hamill from Dandenong Stingrays.
I like this kid. Cade Simpson, I see, and this young fellow, lightly built, but a fantastic athlete. His numbers at the combine blow you away. Speed, endurance, agility, vertical leap. He's a left footer too that uses the ball so well out of defence, plays off halfback, could play on the wing. A premiership player with the Dandenong Stingrays as well. There's not too many boys that have been able to say that in the past. It was their first ever premiership. That's the boy there on the left foot. Looks a real draftee. So you're looking down the track with these lightly built boys, but he's got the tools, is what you say, the kicky ability, the athletic ability. He's about 185 centimetres, so he's a nice size.
Yeah, look, he's exciting and one of the most humble kids I've come across. I had a bit to do with his father, Steve, who was a champion player at the Frankston Dolphins back in the VFA days. But he was actually genuinely shocked, Will Hamill, at being selected at the Dandenong Stingrays as a 17-year-old and has just continued to grow and get better. And as Kev mentioned, you look at his speed and agility, he performed in the top 5% of all players at the National Combine this year. So
where's he best suited? Is he a half-back? Is that his best spot?
I think it is, with his ball use. It can set the play up from back there, a la the Cade Simpsons of the world.
Yeah, it's always nice seeing a left footer as well, isn't it? There's just something about them.
Yeah, well, I think too, he's got the capacity to play on a wing as well. I think he gives them great speed on the outside, and you got Chase Jones, who can play inside and out. I think Will Hamill's a little bit more suited to the outside, just purely because of his blistering speed. Beautiful left foot kick of the footy. So I think we'll expect to see Will Hamill. He'll take a little bit of time, there's no doubt about that. I don't think he'll have an immediate impact at the Crows, but that's the second of the Dandenong Stingrays boys to get an opportunity.
And Luke Valenti, you can see the Fox Lab rankings had him at 14. He has not been selected yet. West Coast is next up with pick 31. He was the South Australian captain, very good leader as well, I'm told, and I wonder how soon he's going to go. Surely he goes at some stage, but just whether the Eagles pick him up now or another team does later.
Interesting to see the makeup of those rooms. You see the experience. Brady Rawlings, of course, the list manager on the phone in the foreground. Rowan O'Brien, their recruiting manager in the background. Scott Clayton is now part of that group. A very experienced team in there with this responsibility of using their selections very, very wisely. So a lot of consultation, a lot of viewing of matches, both live and on tape over a couple of years to come down to this few minutes you've got to make your calls. And there's some great natural eyes for talent in that room.
Yeah, done an outstanding job too, Rowan O'Brien, the national recruiting manager there. He's one of the more humble people in football. He's a no fuss type operator, and they've got a very, very strong recruiting team, and I think one of the most powerful and most exciting lists in the AFL at the moment. So they're certainly set up for the long term. You think of guys like Oscar Allen and Jared Brander and those sorts of players that are still at the club and yet to debut. So they're certainly in a very, very strong position, the West Coast Eagles.
And they've certainly got enough people working on their recruiting team, as all clubs do as well. You get the feeling these little corporate suites at Marvel Stadium actually aren't big enough to fit all these list managers and recruiters in, and coaches in some respects as well. They've got their pick in now, the West Coast Eagles.
Pick 31, West Coast Eagles have selected Luke Foley from Subiaco.
A local boy for you, Mick.
Yeah, I love this kid. I've made no bones about this. He is an elite outside runner. He's a middle distance type runner that's a 400, 800 and 1500 metre state runner. He got overlooked as an 18-year-old, very, very outside, and Subiaco, through Bo Wardman and Michael Farmer, the coach and the talent manager out at Subiaco, played in their premiership team this year. They took him inside and tried to develop the competitive side of his game and wanted him to be able to hold his own. He had a couple of really big moments in the Colts Grand Final over in WA where the game was on the line. He stood up, stood under the footy and took a couple of really important marks. Elite runner that can really cover the ground. So I think that's a fantastic selection by the West Coast Eagles, a homegrown talent that's ready to go. He'll step in and play football early.
His eyes lit up, didn't it, then, Kevin, when he was selected? Clearly you know him really well from the WA and Subiaco region, but is it a good selection by the Eagles?
I think it is, and Mick summed him up terrifically well. Grab your second chance. Not everyone goes at 18. There'll be boys at the end of tonight or today that won't have got an opportunity. Just dig in, work harder, be resilient. Your chance may come like Luke Foley next year.
And sometimes they're the best players to get as well, the ones who've been around and maybe done a uni course or maybe got some work done as well.
Yeah, interesting too, when you start looking at local product and the West Coast Eagles picking one ahead of Fremantle, you wonder whether they started to eye off that sort of player and that's why the Eagles jumped. But he also had a quad injury late in the year, Luke Foley, and quite a significant one and missed a fair bit of football. But he's A-grade character and, he'd be more than happy to stay at home and travel just down the road to what's building as one of the premier facilities in Australia that the West Coast Eagles are building also.
And what about the fact that he's a mature age recruit born in 1999? How does that make you feel? It's certainly plenty of kids born in the 2000s now, and actually even a few born after the Sydney Olympics, which I find interesting as well. But I guess it's a natural progression. This draft, of course, the last year's draft, there was almost one kid born in 2000. I think it was Tom McCartan that was the youngest player.
He was, and we see the Freo boys there. David Walls, recruiting manager. Peter Bell, of course, in his new role as the footy manager with Ross Lyon. A very experienced group once again charged with these decisions. Peter Bell's a great person to have as a footy manager with his wonderful life experience as a player, a lawyer, of course. I think he'll make some great decisions for the footy club. Great balance about him. And
fresh out of the media as well, Peter Bell. I think he arrived about a week or two before the trade period and went bang, bang, bang pretty much straight away.
Yeah, well, I love that about Belly and a lot of guys that are close to him. He is a no-frills operator.
Pick 32, Fremantle have selected Luke Valenti from Norwood.
That's the one.
Well, get yourself a leader. Get yourself a kid that'll work hard. I think he's the most improved player at underage level in Australia this year, this boy.
It's a big call, yeah.
To captain this side, that was a great side. We saw the boys taken in the top 10, about 4 of the top 10, and yet they chose this boy early in the year to be their captain, and he led them so well. He set the whole standard for them, both on and off the ground. Wins contested footy, as we say, distributes it so well. You want a guy right in the guts that can do that, set your play up and be a young leader for your team.
He's the ultimate professional, Luke Valenti, so I'm really glad to see the Fremantle Footy Club recruit some strong character into the group as well. I think it's important in the direction of their football club that they do get some really high character young men in the place that can start to turn the fortunes around and hopefully get a repeat of where they sat in 2015.
He wants to be a sports journalist if he wasn't a footy player. Let's hope he can wait 10 or 15 years and get into the media after he finishes playing as well. He looks to be a very good young player. Those highlights were super impressive and the Dockers have got a good one, I think. On to the Ds again now. Melbourne, well, they've already just entered the draft with a player just before and now they're back in it with pick 33. We haven't got that half-back we've been speaking about yet. I wonder what they're going to do now.
Yeah, it's nice to be in a position, isn't it, when you're the Melbourne Football Club that you can actually chop and change a little bit. That's through some great preparation that the guys have done in building their list. But just touching back on Luke Valenti, we see there, obviously, captain South Australia. We saw his scout profile, which was very, very consistent across the board. And like I said, I'd say they've set a clear direction, Fremantle, in that they do want good people in the football club, and they are going to start to rebuild that culture.
Kevin, who makes these calls? You've got a coach who's very much in there. Really, the buck does stop with him, according to a lot of the fans and the members, but the list manager and the recruiters surely play a massive role, if not a bigger role.
Well, it's important you have that worked out before you go into this 5-minute deliberation.
And every club would be different as well,
They would
I'd
be
imagine.
slightly different. They'd have a discipline. You must have a discipline. They would have had long debates and then it gets down to a couple of minutes here. In most cases, I think it should be the recruiting manager on the new talent. The list manager is a bit broader with all of the players in the AFL competition to manage the players from other clubs, etc., decide on the salaries. But I'm one for the recruiter having the major say, but he must be smart enough to take on board all of the views of the group. But when it gets tight, like, you know, on some occasions it will get tight in there and they'll have a disagreement. And at the end of the day, someone needs to be able to say, well, OK, I hear what you're saying, but my call is. You must have that set up within your group. Otherwise, there can be chaos in a war room like this.
Yeah, I'd love to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, we look at that list and on the Fox Lab rankings of who's still there. I think someone like a Curtis Taylor would really suit Melbourne, that hybrid forward type in the mould of a Mark Lacroix.
Pickers in, Melbourne Demons.
Pick 33, Melbourne have selected James Jordan from Oakley Chargers.
Another Oakley Charger, James Jordan. They're certainly going for these Melbourne-based lads. What do you make of this selection, Mick?
Yeah, well, they have. They've gone for another local product, and they have gone for that mid-forward, as we see on screen there. So Curtis Taylor was the one that I thought might have been next in line for that position, but Melbourne taking a different tact and going with the Oakley Chargers product.
Yeah, so he's a boy from Caulfield Grammar that just really jumped into the Oakley Chargers late in the year. Yep. He's down from Yarrawonga. Down in the country. Caulfield Grammar often get boys from the country down, so mainly played school footy. Then late in the year was playing that well at school level. They popped him into the Chargers, just played the 7 matches late in the year, but was an important player on grand final day there at Oakley. So yes, it was his performance in just 6 weeks.
So a bit of a surprise then.
Yeah, so he was probably a smoky to go, wasn't in the main group of 80 we tested, but that can happen, it will happen.
That's the great stories about this draft. Pick 33, and when we were probably referring to him as a smoky, not a hell of a lot of information about him before those final 6 weeks. Of course, he played well at school footy. Pick 34 is in. Not quite yet. We've got a big pending with the GWS Giants. They're certainly causing a bit of havoc at the moment, which they enjoy doing, as is their right.
Yeah, and Kieran Briggs is the player that they've actually bid on. He was my bolter last night when we had a chat on the coverage. He's a ready-made ruckman, and obviously they're thinking long-term. They're thinking the West Coast Eagles back up for Nick Naitanui and Nathan Vardy and the like. Obviously, they picked up Tom Hickey in the trade period, so... But and interesting that there's a bid on a ruckman, a former pick 34, Max Gawn. So this is where you'll start to see those sort of ruck types and the Bailey Williams and key position players starting to come to the fore.
I'd match the bid in a heartbeat on this boy.
Yes.
Gee, he had a big impact playing for the Allies and for the Giants this year. I mentioned earlier the MVP at both levels, but I watched those games closely and he had a big impact in big moments in the game. Big Shane Mumford type.
And they've matched the bid. Steve Hocking.
Pick 34, GWS Giants have matched West Coast Eagles bid for Kieran Briggs from Pennant Hills Demons.
Another boy overlooked last year, which is great, you know, that you work harder, put your head down, get better, present yourself in your 19th year as someone ready to play in the AFL. This is the big boy there passing it off, playing in the Allies colours, the combined side from Division 2 of our championships. It sees the boys from New South Queensland, Tassie and the NT come together, play against Vic Country here. And this was a quarter where he really had an impact on the outcome of the game. A couple of big contested marks up forward.
And the Swans can't have it all their way, Tom. Unfortunately, he lived a kilometre out of their zone, so he could have almost been a Sydney Swans Academy player. So they've had a pretty good draft so far. Unfortunately, they'll miss out on Kieran Briggs, but he's a very, very talented young man. I saw in an under-18 championship game, and Kev, you would have seen the same. He came off the bench, and I thought, he's going to absolutely kill this kid as he came off and laid one of the bigger hits of the championships. But that's the way he plays the game. He's tough, he's physical, and it's great to see a big man playing as a big man should.
And an NGA kid as well. Knew very little about AFL as a kid. He even supported the Sydney Roosters in the NRL and only came to football a little bit late. We've got a trade for this pick. We believe a trade is coming. No, sorry, news just in. No, that's not this pick. My apologies. He works part-time as a supervisor at Coles as well, so he's clearly got himself away and he spent this year focusing on footy, Kieran Briggs.
Yeah, and he was a guest there last night. His dad's a big boy too. Two giants. They're still learning about the culture of AFL and how drafts work, and to see a boy from Pennant Hills, another boy from Pennant Hills in the west of Sydney get up to be an AFL-listed player is pretty important for the game.
And we just saw it flash up on the screen there that a trade is in, so we're just waiting on that to unfold. Now, interesting from a list management perspective, boys, this is where, as we see that trade recap on the screen taking place between North Melbourne and St Kilda, the interesting one, if you're the West Coast Eagles, when you do have a strong list and you're in this period of the draft, is there a club that needs to be up selecting around that mid-30s region and got a need for some of the talent still on the board, whereas the West Coast Eagles potentially looking maybe to 2019 and what may be available in that draft. So that can be sometimes why these conversations get drawn out a little bit longer than what's expected. But obviously the trade recap, Tom?
Yeah, I wonder whether that's got anything to do with Bailey Scott as well, and whether they don't want to have that involved with anything earlier on. I mean, it's an interesting one because it doesn't look it looks quite innocuous at face value, but Bailey Scott being involved, it makes it quite critical.
Yeah, it certainly does. I wouldn't imagine the bid for Bailey Scott to be too far away, and I think he's actually one of the more underrated players in the draft as well.
Yeah, Bailey Scott, of course, the son of Robert Scott, who had the option, 3 options. He, of course, played more than 100 games at Geelong, at North Melbourne, and living up on the Gold Coast, he could have become a Gold Coast Academy player as well. He's chosen North Melbourne, nominated North as his destination club, if you like, and we'll just have to wait and see at what point he is bid, but I'm sure North are ready to match that bid.
Yeah, I'm sure they're thinking ahead. North Melbourne and St Kilda, of course, looking to pick up some quality youngsters, and Bailey Scott, of course, wants to be a North Melbourne player, and I'd imagine the Kangaroos would love to have him as well for the right price, Mick, which is really important in these discussions.
Yeah, well, once you start to get out to this period in the draft, they actually don't cost you much, Tom. So it's initially those players in that top 20, top 25 that generally cost the clubs the points and the position in the draft and have a significant effect on their later picks. So I'd imagine when the bid comes, it'll be a pretty quick match from the North Melbourne Footy Club, who have already got an outstanding prospect in NGA Academy player Taron Thomas.
Can you explain to us the NGA very briefly? We'll do that in one sec because a pick is in, and it's the West Coast Eagles with that pick number 35.
Pick 35. West Coast Eagles have selected Bailey Williams from Dandenong Stingrays.
Fantastic. A ruckman, a couple of ruckmen there pretty close together, and Bailey's a jack in the box. Nearly 200 centimetres, spring-heeled, had the best vertical jump at our draft combine. You see that in his games, whether it's in the ruck or up forward, where he can take some terrific marks with his leap. Again, a premiership player with the Dandenong Stingrays. We saw him do very well through the finals as well. But look at his agility at ground level there for a boy of that size. So, surprisingly, the ruckmen are going quite late, and that's been the trend in recent years, because they will take a wee bit of time, but he's a good prospect.
Plenty of ruckmen at the Eagles as well now.
Yeah, I love this pick. Absolutely love it. We see bargain buy up there. They have absolutely got a bargain, the West Coast Eagles. He was the leader in the running vertical jump at the combine with 94 centimetres, runs a 2.95 20-metre sprint, and he's a very talented basketballer. He's competed in high jump. That big ground over there, the fast ground, I think that's an outstanding selection.
What's his best position then? Because that is the question mark.
I think he's a forward ruck.
Okay.
That's my view on him. He has got some work to do, but it's that athletic ability, as we see on screen there, where he can actually run and jump at the ball, and I think that's where he goes. I think he pinch hits in the ruck a little bit as well. Does have some work to do on the goal kicking though. We see it as a tick on the screen. He actually kicked 24 goals, 31 for the year, so he can be a little bit wayward in front of goal, but certainly a very, very strong pick by the West Coast Eagles.
And so they've got Nathan Vardy and Nick Natanui and Tom Hickey, and Now they've got another young ruckman as well. Certainly quite a top-heavy list at the face of it, but we know that Naitanui is injured.
Yeah, of course, Scott, like I said, going out, so it's no surprise that they've got him in. But I think they'd be rapt to get him at this point in the draft. As we say, one of 2 taken, and they've got the need for it.
Now, I wonder what the Brisbane Lions are going to do here. We haven't spoken much about them this afternoon. They were an active player yesterday, of course, and absolutely in the trade period where they lost Dane Beams and picked up Lachie Neale. What can we expect, do you think, from the Lions, Mick?
Well, I would have thought they potentially would have expected a bid for Connor McFadden by now, who's a Brisbane Lions Academy prospect, but I've got nothing but praise for the Brisbane Lions in the way they've gone about things. Obviously, we see Dom Ambrosio there, who was the apprentice to Scott Clayton for a long, long time at the Bulldogs and at the Gold Coast Suns, now getting an opportunity to build his own list up in Brisbane. Yeah, Dom doing a terrific job, and he certainly built this list with Jared Lyons as well very recently. We're not far away from pick number 36 here, which is going the way of the Brisbane Lions in that dark corporate suite at Marvel Stadium, and it's now in.
Pick 36, Brisbane Lions have selected Thomas Berry from Greater Western Victoria Rebels.
You love this, don't you, Kevin?
Yeah, brother of Jared, of course, and been injured a little bit this year. He's a terrific competitive beast, this boy. Just a week ago, he had a time trial with other boys that weren't fit for combine, and he's a boy that rattled home and won the 2K in brilliant fashion. So athletically, he is elite. And he's a young leader too. We saw him play both midfield as a medium defender, and he can play forward as well. But the Berry family, Jared's been a terrific player already with Brisbane, and to get his brother up there, they're going to be rapt.
Well, I think Jared Berry's been hassling the Brisbane Lions recruiting staff all year. Get my brother. They've got their man, and Jared Berry will be very happy, and I'd imagine the family is very pleased as well. Yeah, well, they're very, very close. So obviously lost mum quite a number of years ago to cancer, and the dad Troy is very, very close to his 2 boys. So you might even find that Troy might move from country Victoria up to Brisbane now. But they are clearly picking character, and they are building something pretty special at Brisbane. So these are very, very smart recruiting by Dom Ambrosio, and obviously we know Chris Fagan. We know his value on building that group and acting as a father figure to a number of the younger players. He's a talented player, Tom Berry. He averaged only the 11 and 5 tackles at the Champs, but he can have an impact on a game through his elite run. He's got a little bit more speed than what Jared had at the same stage. Yeah, very strategic there from the Brisbane Lions. We saw Lincoln McCarthy go up there. He was traded to the Brisbane Lions, but his best mate is Lachie Neale. So they're not just picking good players, they're picking good players who can also stay at the club for a long period of time. Pick 37 is in.
Pick 37, Western Bulldogs have selected Latham Vandermeer from Murray Bushrangers.
Speed, and why not? Probably off back flank or wing. Vandermeer is a dasher, and again a 19-year-old, overlooked last year, and then was injured in the Ian Hill tackle down there in GMHBA Stadium in Geelong playing for Vic Country. So he didn't play in the back half of the year, but a real dasher, line breaker, Johannesson type. Really, that they've chosen to play probably down in defence. Yeah, and he's a really efficient ball user too. So averaging 21 disposals at the Bush, he's at 76%. So he doesn't waste too many disposals. And I think there might be some longevity in the bloodlines too with his father, Jeff, played 300 games of footy at Mooroopna. So I think by the look of that, the Western Bulldogs will be hoping that Leif Vandermeer can repeat that and have a really strong career at the footy club for a long time. Oh, that'd be terrific if they could do that. Essendon have 4 minutes left on the clock. They're looking for pick number 38. They haven't been really around the mark at all this draft. They've had a very, very busy trade period bringing in Dylan Shield. And it is their first pick of the draft coming up with pick number 38. What can we expect from the Bombers? Because they could do anything, couldn't they? They might look at home. It might be Curtis Taylor, someone like that that's only around the corner. Adrian Dodoro in charge, been there for a long time, doing a wonderful job overseeing their list management. Rob Foster-Knight, that has been through the draft process himself years ago across to Port Adelaide, and now, of course, at Essendon in a recruiting capacity. One of the great football men, Adrian Dodoro, and he's had his critics over the years in terms of being difficult to trade with. Hasn't he had an outstanding couple of years with Devon Smith, and obviously Adam Sard brings in Dylan Shield now.
they're in the window, the Bombers. They are legitimately in
Pressure's
that
on.
premiership window now, and I know Adrian's a very, very passionate man, and he's chasing that next premiership. There's no doubt about that. The other one on the board there is Tom Joyce. If they're looking for a midfielder, I just think he's someone that's really slipped down the order. I spoke last night about him being a bargain in this year's draft, and if they want to continue to bolster the midfield, I think he'd be an outstanding selection. Then you've got the likes of Jack Bytel too, Kev, who's had some back injury issues over the course of the year, but he's another one that's an outstanding prospect that'd be value for money down the order.
Yeah, wind back the clock 12 months. He won the MVP at under 17 level in a futures game and has just had that back injury, some stress fractures, then a bulging disc that's put him out for a little while, but he was also medically cleared just recently, but may miss a little bit of the summer. So he's one that, I think will get picked up in the next little period, but a local boy from out the Calder Cannons area, it might well be him.
I wonder whether they're going to look for someone who is ready-made and can help them win this flag that you speak about, Mick, or maybe a player of the future. Either way, it's probably going to be a very young player, an 18 or 19-year-old, and they'd love someone to come in like Zach Merritt did or a Darcy Parish in their first year, but they've certainly had a good couple of years, as you just mentioned, with Adrian Dodoro. So they've got pick 38, and they're certainly taking their time. It is their first pick of the draft. Quite a late entry, actually, for the Bombers, reminiscent, not quite, of Hawthorn a couple of years ago, where they didn't enter till about pick 80, but they've had a busy trade period, and as a result, they've lost some draft picks as a result of that. Does that actually hurt them, or do you think they've actually done well?
I really think they've got one of the most promising lists in the AFL at the moment. Yeah. I think they've got a really good mix of youth in there. They've also got some experience, and that's why I say I genuinely think they are in the window. I think they'll continue to build that list. They've brought in some free agents over the last couple of years, but most importantly, they've brought in guys who are yet to hit the peak of their career as well. So that's when you talk about the Devon Smiths and the like. But Joe Danaher back this year, he'll be a massive addition for the Bombers.
Well, the pick, it looks like there's a bid pending, and it's Irving Mosquito. Probably the best name in the draft, a real live wire. Hawthorn, we know, have first access to him. Do you think they're going to match that one, Kevin?
They'll match it very, very quickly. He's an exciting player. They've talked to him at some Cyril traits, Indigenous boy, of course, from the Kimberleys of Western Australia that's moved down to Gippsland. And so he's available as a next-generation academy player to the Hawks. And just the injuries in the middle of the year meant we didn't see much of it at national level, but late in the year playing for Gippsland, we've seen some blistering moments. He can turn them inside out with his pace. And I think they're all set to match this bid.
Yeah, look, as we look at the screen there, the simplest way of explaining that is it costs them pick 49, really. They'll come back in at pick 72, and so it does push them a little bit out in the draft. But when you lose, as Kev mentioned, the guys like Cyril Rioli, and these are legitimate bids. I think the Bombers have got a need for a small forward. So, I mean, if Carlton...
It's not a smoke screen. They're not just looking for more time,
No, absolutely
not.
No, they've got a great opportunity here to pick up a really talented, deadly accurate small forward in Irving Mosquito if the Hawks were to pass and to allow the Bombers to take that player, which can happen. There's certainly that option for Hawthorn if they think he's too high, don't think he's worth being pushed back to pick 72 in the draft, they might pass on him.
And we've seen that, of course, in previous draft with Josh Dunkley, was bidded by the Western Bulldogs in the early 20s, and Sydney had the chance to match the bid, decided not to, felt it was too early for the type of player he was, and so the Western Bulldogs got him, and a year or so later, he's a premiership player.
Well, it's romance versus premierships, isn't it?
We all see things differently, slightly different needs as well at different points, so we'll have to wait and see what Hawthorn's view is.
See the Hawthorn team there led by Graham Wright, Mark Smart as well, former St Kilda recruiters at the back, doing the job for Hawthorn. Probably one of the least populous rooms we've seen compared to some of the other recruiting teams and list management teams.
Yeah, well, if you look at both these clubs, the Bombers and the Hawks, what I love about guys like Adrian Dodoro and Graham Wright is they just keep it simple, Tom. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel or make it any more complicated. They're very, very intelligent people. They're guys that have been in the caper a long time, and they do their preparation and they make sure they know exactly what's going to unfold on draft day and also try and stay ahead of the curve.
All right, here we go. Steve Hocking.
Bid for Irving Mosquito from Gippsland Power.
So there it is, Irving Mosquito. They've passed on Irving Mosquito. the Hawks. So he's an Essendon player. That is what he called Mick. So the Hawks didn't want him that high, and Essendon say, we'll take him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beauty.
Look at Adrian there, you see on screen. He is very excited about that. I would have thought they would have been hoping Ian Hill might have slipped a little bit further today and they could have got access. But, geez, Irving Mosquito, he's a happy man, Adrian, which is good to see. And the Bombers get another really talented Indigenous player, which they've had a great track record over the years. You go back to the Kevin Sheedy days with Michael Long and the like. You look now at obviously... Anthony Tipton-Woody. They have got a very, very proud Indigenous history, the Bombers, and they've continued that with Irving Mosquito.
I enjoyed that. Adrian Dodoro almost did a cartwheel when he saw that he was going to be an Essendon player next year.
Well, as we said, we'll see things differently. Creative, exciting, blistering pace. Just the injuries might have been the concern for Hawthorn, I'm not sure. But, gee, at his best, he's good enough to really light up any footy field with what I've seen over the last couple of years.
Well, how does it work? They have a ranking system, I presume, and then they just go through, and if it's too high, they just don't match the bid. Is it as simple as that?
Nearly as simple as that. They'll have on their computers there their own order. And they'll probably have them broken up into their positions as well, as to how they rank them in positions. And that there will be a point where it will be the overall ranking that they consider. At other times they'll say, look, we've already got the small forward, so we'll switch to the tall defender that we may well need.
Look at Adrian Dodoro, give it a little fist pump we just saw there. He's certainly a character, Adrian Dodoro, and he's continued his good work there with Irving Mosquito. He's going to be a fan favourite regardless of when he plays, isn't he? He's certainly a little live wire.
Yeah, no doubt, he certainly is. So it's funny how these young players get a cult following so quickly. We spoke about Isaac Quainer last night, who no doubt's in a similar mould, but Irving Mosquito, we've been watching him for a couple of years now, and don't worry, he'll certainly bring a lot of the Aboriginal population along with him, and I'm sure the Bombers will benefit from that in the membership stakes over the next few years.
Yeah, of course. It's very important. It's terrific seeing all these Indigenous players being picked up because they add so much to our game. The Brisbane Lions, they're next, and their pick is in with number 39. And it is a bid for Jared Cameron.
Is it? That's Charlie's.
There we go. Charlie's brother, Kevin.
Wow, here we go. It's the small forwards again, and why not? Mick, you mentioned him earlier. I love that game at Geelong from this boy. He wasn't in the original squad for WA under 18 level early in the year. Kicked 5 in this game, and some of the goals were just off the one step. A magnificent dead-eye with his kicking round goal, and a boy from up in the Kimberleys of WA that's come down to play in Perth. But that 5 goals put him on the radar of all of the clubs, and you'd expect that they might well match the bid around this mark.
Can you imagine sitting in the Cameron household at the moment? He will be hoping that the history repeats in the previous pick and that the West Coast Eagles pass on him, because I have no doubt he'd love to be in Brisbane with Charlie. But we just saw this before with the Adelaide Crows too, when they put the bid in on Will Kelly. So these, for people watching, these aren't dummy bids. This isn't scripted or anything like that, but there'll be a very, very nervous Jared Cameron at home. Probably came a little bit earlier than I expected.
I haven't got it yet. Pick 39. West Coast Eagles have matched Brisbane Lions bid for Jared Cameron from Swan Districts.
Sorry, Charlie. Jared staying.
It's classic Brisbane, though, isn't it? That's what we were talking about before with Lincoln McCarthy and the Berry brothers. They're just looking to bring anyone they can get that are good players that will stay at the club for a long period of time. And it's something that potentially other clubs down that end of the ladder should adopt a little bit more.
Yeah, and look, that box on the end there, the consistency box, that's probably the question mark for me, is, and that's something that Jared's got to work on, is being able to really produce consistently. Drew Petrie's done a lot of work with this young man, and I give a lot of credit to Phil Smart and Greg Harding at the Swan Districts Football Club. He had his challenges earlier in the year, Jared. They've been very, very patient with him. Debuted at league level for South Fremantle late in the season, and the Swan Districts Footy Club have got a very, very proud record of producing some talented kids that have had their knocks early in their careers.
X Factor. Well, if there's ever an X Factor highlight reel, this is it.
That's the game at Geelong where he kicked the 5 goals on the national stage. 200 recruiting managers watching, and you do that. And has he got some swagger about him? You love the small forwards that have got that. You need to believe in yourself, number one, don't you, if you're going to try and win the ball when you're only small, and he can find those big sticks, which is so important.
I'm enjoying what he had to offer there. I look forward to him playing for West Coast next year. Of course, they matched the bid and he'll be an Eagle. The Brisbane Lions had a crack and they're back in it now at pick number 40. What do they do? There's a real influx of small forwards here. I just wonder whether it's still a hangover from the Richmond Premiership a couple of years ago or if it's just best available players.
I think you've got to take the best on the board, and for mine, you've got Curtis Taylor still sitting there. Do they go another Indigenous player? Do they look for some outside run in a Sydney stack? It's going to be very, very interesting to see what Brisbane do.
Pick 40's in.
Pick 40, Brisbane Lions have selected Thomas Joyce from East Fremantle.
Yep, well, he was the slider for mine. He was the bargain buy. I mentioned that at the top of the show last night. I believe this young man could have been a potential top 10 pick, if at absolute worst, a top 15 pick. But he had issues with his hips earlier in the year. He's had them both operated on. He's ready to go. That is an absolute steal for the Brisbane Lions.
He was a star last year for WA in the under-18s as a bottom ager, averaging over 20 possessions. He has got great vision and clean hands, so he's an inside player. Wins it at the contest, distributes it brilliantly. He's recovered from that hip injury, ready to run, so he's a beauty to get around the 40 mark.
Well, Sarah Ollie from foxfooty.com.au is speaking to Ian Hill, who's just been picked up.
Yes, Tom, I'm here with Ian, but you've just told me you only get called Ian when you're in trouble, so it's Bobby. Congratulations. Did you sleep at all last night?
Thank you. No, I didn't sleep at all, probably about half an hour's tops, and just couldn't stop thinking about last night, but today's, I got the opportunity and I'm over the moon to join the GWS, so
it's
happy.
A big move, though, WA to GWS, but I read that you would actually welcome the move. Are you looking forward to playing alongside the likes of Toby Green in the forward line?
Yeah, obviously going to Wesley College, that helped a lot with boarding side and home away from home, but yeah, like I said before, I'm stoked to go anywhere as long as I'm on AFL list and to join GWS and, Toby Green and Josh Kelly and have the young boys that got drafted last night makes me feel a lot better and I just can't wait to get started.
Now, Giants fans will want to know the genesis of Bobby. How did it come about, the nickname?
Well, I was a bit younger, probably about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I had my pop living with us, with mum and dad, obviously, and ended up watching Bob the Builder too much, and that's how I ended up getting it. So, yeah, full credit to Pop, and that's how I got it.
And just lastly, you've got a pretty famous football name. What influence have your cousins had on you?
Yeah, well, having Bradley and Stephen, and obviously had on mum's side Uncle Leon Davis and Jared Pickett, but with those boys, and it makes it a lot easier talking to Bradley, and now that I'm on an AFL list, I'm stoked to join GWS. So.
Well, we look forward to you forging your own identity. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sarah Ollie's had a terrific night last night and she's backed it up again this afternoon. Good interview with Ian Bobby Hill. I think that might catch on, Mick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you talk about interesting stories with these young fellas. Tom Joyce's father is a geologist. He lived on a mine site in Africa for 2 years where there were no other kids around. So it's the stories.
Who's he kicking the footy with?
Yeah, whoever he was kicking it with, Tom. Maybe his mum Marnie might have been out there having the kick to kick, but done a fantastic job. He was playing games early in the year before he had surgery with his hips, and in excruciating pain to the point where he couldn't roll over in bed. So he's got very, very high character, Tom Joyce, and I think he's a ready-made mid.
You certainly rate him very highly. St Kilda's up next. We saw Tony Elshaw at the front of the queue, along with Chris Liberatore, Alan Richardson, and a few others there as well. They've certainly got a large recruiting team, like most of the clubs do. Simon Lethlean, the head of football, out the back, and they've got pick 41. We've got 2 more picks left in this second round. And a few nervous plays at this point, Kevin?
There would be, yes, no doubt. But there's still hope. After this is over, of course, we have the rookie listing later today.
Here's the Saints.
Pick 41, St Kilda have selected Jack Bytel from Calder Cannons.
There we go, the boy we thought was a sleeper. The boy that dominated a futures game 12 months ago has had the back problems. Got the all clear just in the last week. It may miss a little bit of the summer, but he's a beauty, this boy. Stoppage star, hard-edge beauty, would call him, 189 centimetres, so he's a lovely size. And yes, they'll invest in a player here that might take a little bit of time because of that back injury, but will be a long-term player. I reckon that's a great choice.
And Gubby Allen sitting there as well. He's got a big influence on this recruiting team, I'd imagine, Mick.
Yeah, well, he's got the poker face on too, Gub. He's just keeping it nice and relaxed. But there's a couple of young men who probably have slid a little bit through injury and over the course of their 18th year. But as Kev mentioned, 189 centimetre midfielder who's A-grade character. He's going to bring a lot to a group because he's actually quite light-hearted. He's got a really good sense of humour. The impressive thing about him is he's one of those players that just racks up the footy. He just knows where to go to get it.
Is his best good enough? You ask yourself that question. He had a game this year at Ballarat against the Rebels. 37, kick 2, best on the ground. That's before the back caught him a little bit. So you have a look at the vision of that game. Or if you're there live seeing it, you'd say that this boy can play in the AFL. So the Saints would have had a rep there, no doubt in the world.
And before we go to the Tigers, there are doubts clearly over his back then, but the Saints medical team would be looking to get him in shape, just like they are Dan Hanbury as well.
Yeah, it's just time. It'll be okay in the long term, even the short term, in the next number of months.
Yeah. There was doubts over Joel Selwood's knee as well. Let's not forget that.
It's 12 years ago.
Chris Judd's shoulders too. Apparently, and he managed to carry the weight pretty easily.
Put them in a full-time environment and we can see what happens. The Richmond Tigers, they're up next. They've had a busy trade period more in who's gone out rather than who's come in. They've lost quite a bit of depth, but they've picked up Maverick Weller in the last couple of days, and they've got 3 minutes now to make their selection, which is the last pick of round 2. What are we looking at?
Yeah, well, as we see on screen there, what's gone out, and you mentioned, Tom, they've lost some midfield depth, and they'll be looking to replenish.
They've bid on Connor McFadden, the Lions Academy player. Are we likely to see the Lions go, nah, he's ours, Kevin?
I think for sure. This boy's a natural footballer, just reads the ball so brilliantly. And made All-Australian this year. Again, that's one of my benchmarks. Do you play well in the big games? He did. Played for the Allies as well as for the Lions Academy. He's a one-touch player that plays as a marking forward, a medium forward, or as a midfielder. He's the first to move. You know, those boys that read it very, very early, get in front, use his backside very, very well to hold his ground. He's a goal kicker as well. And he's a talented cricketer, a boy that's represented his state and at underage levels of cricketer, but we're so glad that he's chosen to come the footy way. So real natural player that's going to fit in pretty well. He could have been taken in the 20s. There's talks of bids in the 20s, so they'll be rapt to get him this late.
Yeah, I think he's that David Mundy, Sam Docherty type.
Connor McFadden would pick 42. Let's see what they do.
Pick 42. Brisbane Lions have matched Richmond's bid for Connor McFadden from Wilston Grange AFC.
Predictable, Kevin? Absolutely had to happen.
One of their local boys too. They've got to get those onto the list. Queenslanders onto their list. Don't let them slip away, particularly when they've invested time in him as well. And they have the inside knowledge of how hard this boy's prepared to work to play the game. They've had him in their club, so they would have seen those qualities in the young fella, and they've got him into the Lions pretty quickly.
And if you look at the Brisbane Lions list composition too, they've got a couple of smaller types in Lockie Neal and Hugh McCluggage. They've now put the big bulls in there. They've got Eli Smith last night, now added Connor McFadden, who's also a 190 centimetre midfielder. So they're really looking to balance out that midfield group, and geez, what a way to go with McFadden and Eli Smith.
Yeah, I know they did want to have that bigger-bodied midfielders come into the club. Jared Lyons is probably one of them, an experienced player who's been at the Adelaide Crows and Gold Coast, and now they've topped up in the draft again. And it clearly, we sound like a broken record, but they are picking players that are going to be at the club for a long period of time. They weren't going to let McFadden slide through. No, and Dave Noble, since moving from the Adelaide Crows, has done a fantastic job up in Brisbane, and obviously Greg Swan, another very, very experienced football person, and building something quite nicely, aren't they? And as we see, Luke Curran sitting in the foreground there too, has overseen the Brisbane Lions Academy for a number of years now. He'll be stoked to get another local product through. And like a couple of others as well, he's a very good junior cricketer in Queensland. He's chosen footy, and the Richmond Football Club, they're up next. They just had a crack at McFadden, didn't get him, and they'll go for pick 43 now to wrap up the second round. A bit of light in that room as well, in that corporate box. The first one we've seen elsewhere, it's almost like a casino. But they seem to be working quite well at the moment, the Richmond Football Club, off a flag. in 2017, a prelim final loss which shocked many this year. They'll be looking to go again next year with Tom Lynch as their spearhead alongside Jack Rewalt.
Yeah, they're a very balanced group too, the Tigers, when it comes to recruiting. Matty Clark's done an outstanding job, took over recently from Francis Jackson, who we also seen in the room, and guys like Blair Hartley, who's done an outstanding job and built a very, very strong football club that's just gone from strength to strength. And you know, isn't it great to see the big four clubs up and about? Hopefully the Blues can re-establish themselves at the top of the order over the next couple of years, because I think it's great for football.
I think it's great as well that the Brisbane Lions are doing so well up in Queensland with their young list, and let's hope the Gold Coast Suns can follow suit and make it a truly national competition where everyone is competitive, although it is not easy at the moment, of course, because of all the draft concessions and so forth, but it would be good to see the Gold Coast Suns get back up there, and they're certainly making a good fist of things as well. As are the Tigers. We've only got 2 minutes left now. The clock is ticking towards the end of round 2. Thank you for joining us on Fox Footy. It's been great having you, and we'll continue with round 3 after the break. But before then, we've got Richmond with pick 43, just deliberating what they're going to do. Damien Hardwick sitting on the far left. Again, the coach. How much say does he have in this compared to the list manager? I'd imagine Damien Hardwick's got a bit of sway. But probably the trade period is more where the coach comes in, you would have thought, Mick. That's where the coach can actually impart some knowledge based on what he's seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the coaches have to have a say. There's no doubt about that. But I think the clubs that have done it really well over recent years are the ones that do respect the coach's decision. But the coach also respects the recruiting group and gives the list manager and his staff an opportunity to do their role. They're the ones that watch the players week in, week out. They're the ones that are across them, what they do on field, what they do off field. So I think the coach's role in this is vital, and him respecting the job of the list managers and the recruiting group is equally as important.
They've already picked up Riley Collier-Dawkins last night. A terrific story that is, and a very talented young player as well. And with their second pick of the draft, we're just about to see a pick come in, we hope, and it is in now. Pick 43 to Richmond Football Club.
Pick 43, Richmond have selected Jack Ross from Oakley Chargers.
There we go, the Tigers picking up Jack Ross, a young Caulfield grammarian, Kevin.
Fantastic, the best and fairest winner too from the Oakley Chargers this year, in a year in which they were runners-up, had a very consistent, prolific ball winner, and another a boy that wins his own footy through the midfield. Tested very, very well at state level, ticked all of the boxes just with his leadership as well. So he's a boy that has earned his opportunity through his performances this year in the TAC Cup.
And that is the end of round 2 here at the NAB AFL Draft. Marvel Stadium is a hub of activity. Stick with us, round 3 just around the corner. Welcome back to Fox Footy's coverage of the NAB AFL Draft for 2018. As I said before the break, Marvel Stadium is a hub of activity. There's plenty of trades, live trades, also plenty of draft picks and dreams coming true for teenagers all over the country. That's the Sydney Swans there. They've been active last night and also a little bit this afternoon. Jack Ross was the most recent pick for Richmond. He's the 7th Oakley Charger to be selected this draft, Mick, and that is a massive win for that TAC Cup club.
Yeah, remarkable. And they have had a great history of draftees. They're clearly a hotbed for talent in that district, as are the Sandringham Dragons, Dandenong Stingrays that have both been successful in recent times. But we look at pick 44 and wondering who's left on the board too, boys. A former pick 44 that'd be a very handy type was Rory Sloane a number of years ago. So for those people that are watching, there is still some real quality available at this point in the draft.
Yeah, look at the 40s. There's Boomer Harvey, 47, Corey Enright, 47. So there's always been some wonderful picks about. And I think it might be one of those years. I can see some terrific prospects still on the board here. Clubs will believe in their player that they're about to choose as well. Luke Parker, he was a choice 40, wasn't he, to Sydney. It was just quite amazing, I thought, in his year that he could have been there at 40. It shocked us. And he's ended up an All-Australian on a number of occasions.
And a premiership player as well. Well, Steve Hocking stepped out, and General Counsel and General Manager of Game Development from the AFL, Andrew Dillon, has stepped in. He'll conduct the rest of the picks, and it's about this time, I think, that a few players on the edge will just be getting a little bit nervous. Am I going to be picked up? Will I get rookie drafted, or am I going to miss out completely. What is your advice to these players, Mick? Because it is a tough time, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't think it really matters, to be honest.
No.
What I say, look, you just got to sit tight as we see the Sydney Swans pick in.
Pick 44, the Sydney Swans have selected Justin McInerney from the Northern Knights.
Run. This kid's got run. I watched a game this year. The APS AGS here in Victoria have a representative game, and seen Dylan Sheila a few years back dominate that. Well, this boy dominated in my view. He's a boy from Marcellin College that plays in the TAC, but it was in this rep game that I saw some real AFL traits. His run and carry, line-breaking speed. He come in and was tested at state level. Nice sized boy too, and wing, half-back, those sorts of spots, but lightly built. So they'll see some improvement in him getting into their system.
So probably one for the future then, given he's lightly built. Mick?
Yeah, and they've still got a little bit of time to develop those sorts of kids. And great, as we see on the screen there, the bolter, as Kev mentioned, a state combine tested player. So I find these stories remarkable, and I think they give great hope to some of the young men around the country that don't necessarily get invited to national level and think, well, where am I? Where do I sit? How important am I? Well, there's a young man just gone at pick 44 in the national draft, Kev, that was one of those state combine testing players.
Don't need to dominate a whole year. Remember, the clubs are picking for the future. They're picking for 3 or 4 years' time with some of these boys later on. And it doesn't need to necessarily be that best and fairest year. It'll be good enough for you. And that gives everyone hope that maybe they've seen that game I played, that breakout game. Maybe I've interviewed well. Maybe my testing was good. There might be something there that you can hang your hat on that this club has seen. And that's why there'll be surprises where clubs are convinced that they've seen that wee little bit of talent, a thin slice of brilliance that might be enough to get you up.
Yeah, just one little glimpse of hope. We'll get clubs talking, that's for sure. We see the Bulldogs are on the phone there. They've got a very packed corporate box, and Meet Baines, the CEO, is there, along with Nick Austin, who you see pointing with the highlighter. He's relatively new to the club, and Sam Powell, he's the man with all the power. Yeah, he is. 2019's a massive year, I think, for this football club, because on the back of that premiership, they started to establish themselves as a destination that players will want to land at, will want to go to. But then we just saw up on the screen before, you lose guys like Marcus Adams and Luke Dalhouse. So 2019 is pivotal for this football club, just to re-establish themselves and make them an attractive place to land for those free agents in the coming years. And a possible trade of picks potentially coming here, I think. We see Sam Power on the phone. I don't imagine that's to anyone else apart from another club. We'll wait and see who that club is. And right opposite Sam Power is Chris Grant, of course, the Director of Football. Choice number 105 way back in his day, way back in about 1988 at the start of the draft. Talk about a diamond in the rough. A 16-year-old that was chosen in those days, you could draft them very, very early from country Victoria. They become a champion of their football club. This is interesting, seeing what's going to happen here now. The Western Bulldogs thinking long and hard about how they're going to approach this pick 45. Will we see a trade? Might be 2 picks. It's one of those moments at the moment where, here we go, the trade is in. Let's have a listen to let's see what that trade is. Now, analyse that for me, Mick. Yeah, so they lose pick 46 and gain a 2019 third-round pick. So this is where, again, you mentioned Bailey Scott, so probably can't be too far away. I'd imagine the Kangaroos would have been on the phone looking to acquire a pick early. And the pick is in for pick 45 for the Dogs.
With pick 45, the Western Bulldogs have selected Ben Cavara from Williamstown.
That's fantastic news. This boy has been a terrific VFL player for, 3 to 4 years now at least. A small forward, small midfielder that's played at a number of clubs within the VFL system and kept at it. Still had great self-belief, a prolific ball winner and multiple team of the year within the VFL. So size doesn't stop him, particularly if you've got a big heart. And Ben Cavara's just kept at it. Was a star at TAC. It must be half a dozen years ago now. Great to see Ben get his opportunity. And one journo who certainly has a big heart is Sarah Ollie, and she's speaking to new Magpie Will Kelly.
Will, congratulations. What does it mean to know that next year you're a Magpie?
Thank you. Yeah, it means a lot. It's been something I've been working towards for a pretty long time. So to be able to put on these colours, it's an honour.
So obviously your father, Craig, played for the club, but now he's a player agent. Is he going to manage you, or is that a little bit too close for comfort?
No, probably a bit of conflicts of interest there. I'm being managed by Mark Kleiman from TLA, so yeah, we get along really well, which is awesome.
Now, were you there for the grand final this year? Did you watch it, and how was it?
Yeah, I was. It was a great grand final. Can't argue with that, but it was a bit shattering the last 5 minutes when it all kind of slipped away, but it was a great game nonetheless.
And your brother plays for the Crows. I'm sure he's given you some advice. What has he said to you?
Yeah, it's just showed me how much work it takes to get here, and then once you're in the door of an AFL club, if you're lucky enough to be, then you need to prove yourself all over again. So it's really just watching him get to work and all the little things he does.
Well, congratulations. We look forward to seeing you next year as a Magpie.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you to Sarah Ollie. Curtis Taylor's been selected by North Melbourne. Tell me about him, Mick.
Yeah, well, that's clearly the reason they've moved up and did the deal with the Western Bulldogs to get Curtis Taylor in the draft. Think Mark LeCras. That's what he is. He's a really classy medium forward type. Got a lot of time on his hands. He can play tall and small, but he doesn't need much of an opportunity to hit the scoreboard. The impressive thing about Curtis is his ability to string multiple goals together. So he can have quarters where he can kick 2 or 3 and really change the dynamics of a game.
I call him mercurial. I use that word occasionally. Guys that do the exceptional thing and say, wow, how did he win it in the air? How did he win it in the pack? He does some special things.
And Shane Warne is his uncle as well, speaking of mercurial. So he's certainly got good bloodlines in his chosen footy, which is good to see North Melbourne with Curtis Taylor, which is a good selection by them, as you were just speaking about. Up next is St Kilda, pick 47. What are they going to look for here? The Saints, they've got a variety of players this trade period. They're certainly backing in their ruckman, it seems. They've got a tall with an early pick and then a midfielder with a later one, and now the trade is in. Let's see what they go for. Right, it's a trade of picks. The Saints are having a crack now, just trying to move their way around the draft order. Let's see what the picks are, Mick, and I'll get you to analyse it, as you always do so well for us. And it is with Brisbane and North Melbourne that are doing the trade swap.
Yeah, so Brisbane just coming back up. There's clearly a couple of players still on the board that they think will be there in those next 8 to 10 picks. North Melbourne have moved up, got their man in Curtis Taylor, so they probably feel like they're in a position to release pick 54 to the Brisbane Lions and let them have their turn.
And the Saints pick is in.
With pick 47, St Kilda have selected Matthew Parker from South Fremantle.
It was the rumour during the week that they'd go for a mature-aged player from the Waffle. They'd been over recently to see him. And it's great that guys can still get an opportunity when they're in their 20s. South Fremantle boy, you've seen a little bit of him, Mick.
Yeah, I certainly have. He's a really exciting mature-age player. Got power. He's really got absolute explosive power. Matthew Parker had an outstanding season under former Bulldog Todd Curley, coaching at South Fremantle. So they've been great. When you look on the board there and you see the tick against the Waffle form, I think Western Australia's got a tremendous record of producing mature-age talent. Guys, over recent times like the Tim Kellys of the footballing world. So Matthew Parker, look, he'll step in, he'll play early, and I think it's a great selection by St Kilda in the sense that they've added some maturity around such a young, developing group.
So he's ready to go now, is what you're saying?
Yeah, 22 years of age, he's had, with his background in Waffle senior footy, would be ready to play. You mentioned his power. He tested at state combine level, 2.95 for 20, so he's got that burst of speed that you want out of defence.
And the Cats already have picked up Jordan Clark last night, which I think was a very good selection and widely praised by you gentlemen here in the studio and also at Marvel Stadium. And they've got pick 48, which is coming up. Chris Scott, of course, we see there. Stephen Wells, who's been a genius for a long time, hasn't he, Mick? He's certainly done a bulk of work in getting players at the club.
He certainly has, and they've brought some really intelligent people in. I mean, Troy Selwood's an outstanding person doing a great job in recruiting too.
Benjamin Jarvis from Norwood.
Norwood, Benjamin Jarvis. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, a medium forward. Had a terrific game. I think it was against WA in the National Championships. Kick 3. He's a jack in the box. He's got great hands up forward. Even helped out through midfield in that particular game. So it's just his marking and spring, mobility up forward and agility that really are his assets, and a member of that very successful side again for SA in national championships.
And they've got back-to-back picks here, and Chris Scott has picked up his phone. I wonder whether they're trying to orchestrate something slightly left of centre. Who's left? Who can be picked up now by the Cats, do you think, Mick?
Well, I think there's a number of guys still on the board. You think of guys like Toby Bedford, whether they put a bid on a young player like that. I still even get across to guys like Caden Coleman, Buku Kama. So these are all NGA-type players, but as we've seen previously, the clubs don't necessarily match them, Tom. So Tom McKenzie, another guy that's still on the board who we mentioned earlier. Hugo Munn, the power forward from South Australia.
I like a boy from the Falcons called Connor Iden too, a key defender, good speed. We've seen him play forward as well. So there's quite a few options here of attractive players.
Certainly decision time now with these clubs, and the clock is ticking, although it must be slightly easier when you've got 2 picks in a row. You can forward plan and maybe select pick 48 very quickly and then get time to have pick 49. Although, as you say, when you have a list of players, you just simply cross them off as you go, I'd imagine.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's too much sitting on the draft board at the moment, Kev, that we didn't expect to be there. So now it just gets probably back to a little bit of need. And Ben Jarvis at 188 centimetres for the Cats, he was that typical Andrew Mackie, Corey Enright type hybrid player that Stephen Wells has had a great history of selecting.
Well, they're taking their time here now. The Cats, they have every right to do. 3 minutes left on the clock for them. Round 3, we've just started it. We've got plenty of picks to go, and certainly these clubs still looking to bring some talented players.
Now, you can choose your own father-son if you wish. We see that with Dacos a couple of years ago.
Pickers in.
We've
got the bid on Bailey Scott now, Kevin. Here it is. We've been waiting about an hour and a half for this, and it's finally come.
Yeah, and of course he could have chosen Geelong and didn't. He chose North Melbourne as a father-son, so why not Geelong? North will match this, no doubt, in the world. But Bailey Scott, I see him as an earlier choice, and it's myself on the way he played this year. End up captaining the Allies, the best kids from as we say, New South Wales, Queensland, Tassie and the NT. A natural reader of the ball off hands, very smart player. As playing as a crumbing forward, he's got great goal sense, and he's growing still. I think he's got some physical development to do. Bigger than the father, Rob, 200-odd game player, so an excellent player at AFL level. But Bailey, I think he can be a very good AFL player.
We're not long left now to see what's going to happen. Bailey Scott's and the bid's been matched, so there we go. So North Melbourne will get Bailey Scott.
Yeah, he did spend some time at the Cats as well. He played 132 games, Rob, his father, at the Cats, and Bailey spent a bit of time between North Melbourne and the Cats doing some training.
It's good they've picked up their man, North Melbourne. They were waiting for a long time, and in fact they've been extremely active in trading live draft picks, North Melbourne, more than probably any other club in this inaugural year of trading live draft picks. You've got to say that it's worked in their favour. They've got Bailey Scott at pick 49.
And they've got one to come too, Joel Crocker, Darren Crocker's boy, North. So it's been a great year for them for best of bloodlines.
50, Geelong have selected Jacob Kennelly from Norwood.
Well, the running man, the running machine. I love the old X factor of individuals, and his is his running ability. The 2K, I suppose, used to be the 3K. Now it's over the Melbourne Cup distance of 3,200 metres, and this boy was the best in Australia. So he can run. He played terrific for SA again. I don't know how many boys have been taken out of their successful side, but this is him finishing off.
Which one is he there?
He's coming down the outside, and it's Chase Jones, the boy from Tassie, that was a top 10 choice. But this is a brilliant time, just over the 6 minutes. You see his competitiveness as well as athletic ability here. And this is a boy that's come from nowhere, wasn't sort of on the radar in SA as a footballer at the start of the year, and made their state side, had a great championship series of games for SA, and then that was real X factor there, that running ability.
That's good to see, isn't it?
Yeah, prolific ball winner, Jacob Kennelly, so really nice selection there for the Cats.
With pick 51, the Sydney Swans have selected Zach Foote from the Dandenong Stingrays.
Well, boys, I had a text message overnight from a former #1 pick in Travis Johnston, and he will be absolutely delighted. He's very, very close to Zach Foote, was asking when he was going to be taken. Look, this kid's got speed to boot. He's very, very good as an athlete. He's going to be able to play a number of different roles for the Sydney Swans, and that's a great selection out of the Dandenong Stingrays.
Yeah, and again, it bobbed up this year. During the year, we out and watch footy at weekends, and there's multiple games on. And you talk to recruiters that come to the game that you're at. What did you see today? Where have you been? Well, I've seen one today. It was Zach Foot's game. Kicked multiple goals in a game. Hadn't heard of him before, so we're already into the season, into his 18th year. So he's bobbed up from nowhere. It's his blistering pace, as Mick pointed out. That's his point of difference, but a goal kicker too from the wing, another premiership player from the Stingrays.
And Hawthorn's first pick in the draft is in.
With pick 52, Hawthorn have selected Jacob Kajitsky from the Murray Bushrangers.
Related?
Yes, cousin of Cozzy.
Yeah.
Cousin of Cozzy, and again, all-Australian key defender. Great one-on-one player, big-bodied, used the ball well, played on the likes of Ben King in national championships, so the key defender from the Allies, but because he's from that little strip up there in the Murray, he was in the open draft, so he's not Giants Academy automatic and the other clubs can bid for him. He was in the open draft. Had a hip injury late in the year, so we didn't see him test, but geez, I like the way he goes about it. He was at a Tools camp earlier in the year, run by Drew Petrie, so he was a very impressive young man, and then to see him unfold as the All-Australian key defender, no surprise that he's gone. A little bit of surprise that he's still there, sort of at this point. So there are some very good players here as we get up into the 50s.
Is he a bit of a project player, though, given he is a tall? Or is he ready to go in the next year or two, do you think?
He's quite strong, ready now. I think he's had that hip. That'll be the only thing slowing him up. But I think certainly the body's there of a guy that can play on some of the bigger tall forwards in the AFL.
Yeah, I think his high level of competitiveness, Kev, really lends himself to being able to play early. He won't back down. It won't matter who he's playing on at AFL level. He'll certainly compete hard, and that's where his strength lies in the one-on-one contest. So great to see a really talented tall defender in Jacob Kajitsky get an opportunity, and another one of Darren Denneman, the New South Wales State Talent Manager's young charges, and obviously Darren with a great history in his time up in that part of the country in developing elite talent.
And it's good to see the Hawks part of the draft now as well. And Melbourne, another late incomer, has put their pick in.
With pick 53, Melbourne have selected Aaron Nitschke from the Central Districts.
Prolific ball winner through the midfield, this boy. And sometimes it gets as simple as that. You win the ball in a contest, you can push up. He's had a very consistent year at underage level in SA and just head over it. Works very hard. Tony Bamford, Brenton Phillips, the guys who look after their state program, really rated his competitiveness and ball-winning ability and knew he was a chance. Wasn't a certainty to go. He's got his opportunity. Great news for him.
Well, Sarah Ollie's been busy and she's picked up Luke Valenti to have a chat to right about now.
Now, Luke, I actually met your lovely father last night in the lift, and he said that yesterday morning you were giving the valedictory speech. What was more nerve-wracking, the speech or the wait to hear your name called out?
Oh, definitely the wait. It's been, overnight was a bit tough, and seeing all the boys get drafted last night. But so grateful for the opportunity now that Freo have given me.
Did you get any sleep? Bobby Hill said he reckons he had about half an hour.
Yeah, Bobby didn't go too well, but I actually had a fair sleep. I think I was up for so long and I kind of crashed once I got to bed. But yeah, once I got up again this morning, I was pretty nervous. So.
Now, whenever we've heard your name, we hear about your exceptional leadership. What is it that makes you such a good leader?
Oh, I think I like to lead by example, and I think I'm quite vocal as well, and I think I relate to my teammates pretty well, so they're probably my strengths.
And now you get to learn under Nat Fyfe, one of the best skippers in the league. That must be very exciting for you.
Oh, so exciting. I can't wait to get over there and meet everyone, and just really grateful to the club for giving me the opportunity.
Congratulations. We look forward to seeing you next year as a Docker.
Thanks a lot, Sarah.
Sarah Ollie from foxfooty.com.au speaking to Fremantle Dockers recruit Luke Valenti. OK, so St Kilda. They're not far away now. They've got 3.5 minutes left or just less to make their selection with pick number 54. It's getting to that time for the Saints. Do you just go for a project player or someone that's got a bit of X factor, or do you still think there's enough consistency on the draft board to pick someone that you know is going to be a gun in a few years' time?
Oh, I think you really go down the path of that project type, whether it's somebody that fills a need for you that you can see stepping up in 12 to 18 months' time. So they're still vitally important, these decisions, though, because if you go back through the history of the draft, you're talking about guys like Horacio Fantasia, Cale Hooker, Sonny Walters being taken at this point in the draft. So we talk project player, Tom, but you can also get a superstar at this point in the draft too.
Well, the super draft, I think it was Dane Swan at 58, wasn't it? Hey, wouldn't you love to pick up a Dane Swan at this point?
That'd be amazing, wouldn't it? A Brownlow medalist and a superstar player, a premiership player as well. So we're waiting on the Saints here, and then we've got the Brisbane Lions to wrap up round 3. They've got pick 55, but first it's up to the Saints, and we see Dan Hanbury and Dean Kent come in. Clearly the Saints looking for a bounce next year, given the disappointment of 2018.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. They were spoken about in the same breath a couple of years ago as Melbourne, weren't they? And a lot of comparisons drawn between the two.
With pick 54, St Kilda selected Nicholas Hind from Essendon.
Fantastic.
Bobby Davis territory down there.
Yeah. So Nick Hines, runner-up in the best and fairest in the VFL at Essendon, and quick line-breaking stuff, particularly in the finals. He had some great moments, and he's been a consistent player at VFL level for a number of years. It's amazing how people see things differently, don't they? And he was touted as a draftee. Many clubs are talking about him, and so Nick Hine, 181 centimetre boy, just lightly built, but it's that line-breaking speed that he's point of difference.
And another mature age recruit by the Saints.
And this is the importance, isn't it, of state league football, boys, as we're seeing this unfold, and we're seeing players that do have the ability to come and step in and impact at AFL level immediately through that experience against the bigger bodies.
The 24-year-old, yep.
Yeah, so he's been playing Essendon's VFL, and again, it just shows that even if you don't get drafted for a couple of years, if you go back and play good state league footy, you can get picked up because the right people are watching. And the Saints, I'm sure, have had eyes all over the country for all of this year, as have the Brisbane Lions, whose pick has come in for number 55.
With pick 55, the Brisbane Lions have selected Noah Ainsworth from Oakley Chargers.
Charger number 8.
I'm wrapped for this boy too. Again, it was injury that cost him his chance last year. Missed the whole year with the back injuries. Overcome that. As a 19-year-old, he pushed in to play for Vic Metro, played very well in a range of roles, including down back. And he can play through midfield. Athletically, super sound. He made it through to the combine with the best kids in the country. Wonderful young leader as well. So he gets his chance in the 50s.
Yeah,
he's up a star.
He's a real Mark Hutchings type, so he can come in, he can play a role for you as well as find a bit of footy through the midfield. So another good selection.
Well, that's round 3 done and dusted. Looking forward to coming back with round 4 right after this short break. Stay with us on Fox Footy. Yes, Marvel Stadium, from the superheroes to the superheroes of the future in the AFL. It is an unbelievable stadium, that one, and that is, of course, where the draft is occurring right now. We've had 3 rounds of the NAB AFL 2018 draft, and we're not far away from round number 4. What do you make of it so far, Kevin and Mick? It's been an interesting time with lots of trade and pick swaps.
Yeah, well, haven't South Australia had a bumper year? We've spoken about the depth of talent coming out of that part of the country this year. 10 selections, so the most in 5 years, which is incredible, and real credit to Tony Bamford and Brenton Phillips.
Tasmania and South Australia playing a prominent role in this draft, Kevin. Tasmania more so last night, and South Australia today.
Yeah.
And last night, actually, as well. Yeah,
the Tassie boys, to have 2 in the top 10 was a great result for them last night. They've had, probably a couple of quiet years, but we've loved the way Chase Jones and Taron Thomas have unfolded. We've seen them from their 16th year right through to... We knew they're going to be early selections, and they proved that last night. And I think there might be a couple more Tasmanians in the next little piece as well.
Oh, that would be terrific if that did occur, because we've seen so many good Tasmanian footballers over the years in the VFL and the AFL. Pick 56, Melbourne has. They've got 3 minutes and 52 seconds left to make that selection. What do the D's need now? Best available, Mick.
Best available, absolutely. I think of guys like Hugo Munn, and another South Australian, but I think of the big power forward to potentially replace a Jesse Hogan type, and to give guys like Sam Wiedemann a little bit of support and backup as well. He's still on the board, and I know we've mentioned him a couple of times, but Tom McKenzie, Kev, as well. Still a very highly rated prospect, still sitting there waiting for his name to be called out.
Yeah, and Hugo Munn, we'll talk about his games this year. Kicked 4 goals against WA playing for SA, and then 3 goals against the Vic Country side. So he's a boy 197, ended up playing 10 senior games in the Sandful at Sturt. So he'll take some time in an AFL program, but gee, love the way he clunks it. And he's got some real physical presence up forward, so he'd be a project player for sure for a club wanting to invest in a tall forward.
So we're thinking Melbourne will select someone at either end of the field. They've got their midfield stacked up, it appears. We saw the needs of a half forward or a half back or a key position player. That's what they're looking for, you'd think?
Yeah, even if you wanted to go for a smaller midfield sort of forward type, young man by the name of Tyrone Smallwood, who's out of the Claremont Footy Club in WA, that's had an outstanding year, played some senior football late in the season. He's a name that's been bandied around. He's averaged 24 disposals in 6 games of Colts footy early in the piece. He'd be another one I think would really suit the D's.
And logically, they wouldn't select a Toby Bedford here. They'd wait for someone to bid on them, wouldn't they? Because he is an NGA prospect.
Yeah, if he's not taken, they may take him with their last choice if they believe he's good enough to be on their list. I think he's good enough to be on their list. Gee, I love some of the moments this year playing for Vic Country and Nationals, particularly a game at Geelong. He broke the lines. His acceleration and sideway movements was very, very elite. And then, of course, played at Dandenong and Stingrays in their premiership win. So he's a boy that they've got access to. They're probably waiting to see if anyone else bids, and they would probably match the bid. So we'll just have to wait and see. Otherwise, they'll pick him up as a rookie. That's the way it works. They get first dibs on them if they're overlooked by the other clubs.
Well, pick 56 we're waiting on at the moment, and the clock is ticking. I just wonder whether, as it gets towards crunch time, we're going to see some clubs really play with fire a little bit and get right towards the end of their allotted time. And that does get stressful, I'd imagine, in that small room at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, there's probably a little bit of a sense too, sitting there waiting to see if the phone rings as well, whether there's a club that still really values someone left on the board that might want to make a late play and step up and take that pick. So I think that's why we're seeing some of the clubs take their time and give some of these other clubs an opportunity.
Simon Goodwin, Josh Marnie and Todd Viney, they're probably the main names on the screen there, but who else have we got? What other sort of key men at Melbourne do we speak of when we're talking about list management?
Yeah, Jason Taylor is the guy with the glasses that we can see looking in our direction and pondering what he might choose. But look, he's been a great recruiter. He worked at Collingwood, he's worked at Melbourne, been a great spotter of some of the boys that they've moved into their footy club in the last couple of years.
The D's have made their choice.
With pick 56, Melbourne have selected Marty Hoare from Collingwood.
Yes, another mature age player, a lot like Nick Hine. Again, best and fairest winner in the VFL. Good on him, at 22 years of age gets his chance. 189, role player, you know, can play in multiple spots and has been a very effective player. Team of the year again at VFL level. That's fantastic for the VFL competition to see these boys over and above those that were taken as compensation selections before the draft even occurred under rules to try and help Carlton and the Gold Coast Suns. So Marty Hoare, as I say, the best and fairest winner, was certainly tested and looked at by many clubs. Averaged 21 disposals in 18 matches this year playing for Collingwood.
And he was overlooked in 2017, if my memory serves me correct, Kev. He had an outstanding year at Collingwood then also. So a name that's been bandied around for a little while. And again, when you start talking about these sorts of mature age players, we can sit here and tell the young talent all day about bide your time, keep working hard, make the most of your opportunities. But there's proof that a young man that's continued to play really good football at state league level can actually get his opportunity.
Oh, it's terrific to see. Of course, Ed McMullen on the far right-hand side of the screen there, the Freo recruiter having a little joke in the Dockers rooms. That's good to see. Hopefully they can pick up the players they want this afternoon. I hope you're enjoying the coverage on Fox Footy, of course, and Peter Bell and Ross Lyon doing the job for the Dockers there. They do have the next pick. It's pick number 57 and 3.5 minutes left on the clock for them. They've been busy, the Dockers, haven't they? They need to reshape their list and reshape their club for the best because they don't have all the time in the world. They need to do it while Nat Fyfe's still at his best, it would appear.
And the responsibility now is the man right in the centre of the screen. That's David Wall, son of Robert, that really has been in the talent ID area for quite a number of years. Very competent and experienced identifier of talent. And they've got a big responsibility here.
With pick 57, Fremantle have selected Lachlan Schultz from Williamstown.
There we go, another VFL player for you there, Kevin. Again, we just got these mature recruits.
Well, he might be the 6th or 7th mature age player to get through, which is just fantastic. A guy that can play a role up forward. We We see Ben Cavara taken earlier from Williamstown. He's a boy that actually switched a number of clubs, and so sometimes you have to do that. You've got to go to another club, get more opportunities, more game time at senior AFL level or senior VFL level to be noticed and picked up.
I think it's the depth in their list. That's what Fremantle are targeting at the moment. I think if they stay healthy, they're a legitimate chance to play finals, but they'll certainly be looking to add some depth to their list so that if they do have that unfortunate circumstance of copping a few injuries, there's guys there that can step in, and obviously Schultz, a state league player that will have the ability to do that.
That is 6 VFL players taken this draft as well. Again, proving that competition is strong in its own right. The Richmond Tigers have a pick in.
With pick 58, Richmond have selected Fraser Turner from Clarence.
Well, that's the ex-Tasmanian. I thought I'd be disappointed if this boy didn't get an opportunity. He's the running man. Had an outstanding year, played for Tassie in the Academy Series early in the year, was prolific off the wing, and then played for the Allies and was very close to All-Australian. Ran the length of the ground, linked up magnificently, hit the scoreboard as well. And he's a boy that doesn't turn 18 until late in December. So I think there's a massive upside with him, an elite runner.
They keep getting these good runners. The Richmond Tigers are doing all right. As is Sarah Ollie from foxfooty.com.au. She's speaking to Kieran Briggs from the GWS Giants.
Now, Kieran, your story is one of persistence. Overlooked at last year's draft, drafted today. What changed in the year for you?
I think just having the start of the season, having a solid pre-season really sets up the tone for the year, and just going in with a fresh mindset as well. It really helped me for the year. And
I believe this year you were working at Coles. You said in one article you're a checkout chick. You must be pretty good at stacking shelves with the height you've got.
Yeah, no, I was down there a couple of shifts a week, but yeah, just sort of trying to pay for, the daily things with kids these days. But yeah, it was sort of passing the time as well, but yeah, it's good fun.
So do you think that year in the real world made a difference for you and helped your cause to be drafted today?
Yeah, I think having a year out of school really matured my mindset, and just having a fresh mindset going into the year, and not having to focus on school, but could just focus on footy this year.
And exciting to go to a club like the Giants where you've had a connection through the academy, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
With pick 59, Fremantle has selected Brett Bewley from Williamstown.
Yeah, it's really exciting to end up there.
You might have a bit of competition with Big Mummy coming back. Are you looking forward to that?
Yeah, Mummy's been my coach this year, so he's really inspirational for me, and yeah, can't wait to go toe-to-toe with him.
Look forward to the master and apprentice battle. Congratulations.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you to Sarah Ollie for that, and Kieran Briggs. Brett Bewley has been picked up by the Dockers. Kevin, tell us about him.
Well, Williamstown boy, Andy Collins would be pretty happy. Their runner-up and their best and fairest too, had another great year. Mature body, quick too, was tested at sub 3 seconds for the 20. Wonderful kick of the ball, very penetrating kick, and becomes the 7th, or is it the 8th guy out of the State League, the VFL, to get an opportunity.
Yeah, so up to 6 mature age players now taken in the draft. That adds to the... Actually, he's the 7th, apologies, yep. Brett Bewley, but 5 taken in that pre-list period as well. So there was a lot of discussion throughout the year about this mid-season draft, and now we can see why, because these guys that are running around at State League level are vitally important to AFL club lists. And Brett Bewley, a young man, came through the Western Jets back in the day, predominantly as a forward, now pushed up to be a prolific ball-winning midfielder. So outstanding.
With pick 60, Essendon have selected Noah Gown from Gippsland Power.
What do you make of that selection, Kevin?
Best and fairest winner, playing basketball 12 months ago. Yep. Great win for the game, this boy. I hadn't caught up with him until back half of the year. Watched him up in Ballarat at a doubleheader one day and was really impressed. A boy that's a terrific size. He's 193 centimetres. Read it really well, moved with great agility, and he's got that basketball ability of know when to release the ball. He's setting up the smaller forwards with his use of the ball. So won their best and fairest at the end of the year, coached by Lee Brown up there at Gippsland Power. So, Warrigal lad that really made that switch from basketball to footy this year, and he's in the AFL. Well done, Noah. And
are we likely to see the Scott Pendlebury commentary? He's got a basketball background attached to his name all over the place, Mick.
No doubt, Tom. No doubt. That's a no-brainer.
Yep.
You just touched on it before, Kev, when we were talking about Williamstown and Andy Collins being happy. I'm sure he's ecstatic for these young men to get an opportunity, but at the same time, he's probably throwing magnets off his coaching board left, right and centre at the minute.
Yeah. No, they've certainly got a strong VFL team. They won the flag a couple of years ago, and Andy Collins has done a fantastic job, especially given their standalone.
Yeah, and look, one of their objectives is to win the premiership, but the other one is to get a couple of players up. He proudly says that. We wanted to give young fellas the chance to go the whole way, and he'd be very pleased with these results.
Well, a possible trade we're hearing. With that pick on the clock, we can see on the phone there, the Saints, pick 61, and we're hearing that pick could be traded in a matter of moments. We're just waiting to see how this plays out. It is exciting, isn't it? It really does, for the football purist, make it very interesting at this time of the year, and it has become a big media event, and rightly so, given the importance of the players that are being selected.
Absolutely, doesn't it add to the theatre of it? And like I said, these are legitimate conversations where phone calls are flying around left, right and centre. But the pick, the importance of when you get to a pick like this in 61, that was Harris Andrews a few years ago. And when you look at the impact he's had on the Brisbane Lions and what a star he is of the game, Matty Stokes, another one, Kev, a premiership player at your beloved Cats. So as we continue to go down the board, we continue to find gems in the draft. So, but deep in conversation here, the Saints.
That's Gallagher. That's the new list manager at the Saints. To his left is Chris Liberatore, and to his right is Simon Lethlean. All the powers that be, and then Alan Richardson and Gubby Allen and Tony Elshaw as well. Tony Elshaw was Dennis Pagan's right-hand man in their flags in the mid to late 90s. A very experienced team, and Gubby Allen's a great pick-up. We're just waiting to see what's going to happen here with this trade, whether pick 61 will go elsewhere or whether it will stay with the Saints. But judging by this elongated phone conversation, you'd suggest it's going elsewhere.
Yeah, it looks that way, doesn't it? So it looks like a follow-up phone call. As you mentioned, Chris Liberatore still on the phone. So this is incredible. We see the movies over in America, the NFL draft. I'm no good at lip reading, Tom, and I wouldn't even attempt it. But we see the conversations in the movies, Kev, where draft day, I think of the Kevin Costner movie where there's, 8 to 10 different phone lines into the room. I've got no doubt that's where we're heading in the future.
They could have actually been speaking to two different clubs as well. I wonder whether there's a little bit of a battle for this pick 61. Who wants it? Maybe two clubs coming after it, and who do they want to give it to? Now they've got a minute 38 to decide what they want to do. It is on. The pressure is on right now. Collingwood on the phone as well.
They're a very, very experienced group there in the Collingwood room, as you see. Adam Shepherd, Derek Hine, Don Malesi, guys that have been in that football club. Jeff Walsh, that have been around that football club for a long period of time and been great for the Pies and allowed them to obviously regenerate and rebuild their list to appear in a grand final in 2018.
I always wonder who's coming at the St Kilda Football Club here. Is it Collingwood offering something up, or is it the Saints saying, hey, let's do this? We're speculating it's Collingwood, of course. We do see them on the phone, but it could be any of the 18 clubs at this stage. Less than a minute left. What are we going to see here? It's actually unbelievable, isn't it? This is exactly what the AFL wanted. They wanted live trading, and they've got it, and it's on live TV here on Fox Footy. We hope you're enjoying the coverage with Kevin Sheen and Mick Ablett and Sarah Ollie down at Marvel Stadium. So they're off the phone there in the Saints rooms. 30 seconds remaining, and the trade is in. Let's have a look at what it is. Just waiting for it to come up now. Can't be far away. There it is. St Kilda and the Giants. So not Collingwood.
No, so St Kilda lose pick 61, which obviously the Giants are on the clock for, and the pick is in. They're running out down to about 13 seconds as we're about to hear what GWS selected.
GWS has selected Connor Iden from the Geelong Falcons.
We'd mentioned the boy just a few moments ago. Now, they've targeted him, obviously, because he's a good player on the board. At 191 centimetre boy that can play key defence or even key forward, tested athletically very, very well. A boy with an African background as well. Didn't qualify for Next Gen Academy for Geelong, so was in the open draft. But I've seen his physical change in this 12 months. He played on Cameron Rayner last year in a last season, not this year, in a TAC Cup game and did very, very well. But I could see the change in him physically. He looks a great athlete now that looked quite capable of playing at AFL level. That was my view of him and was surprised he was still on the board. So that's why they've moved in and saying he's worth trading up for.
And if we look at his profile there out of the lab, he's that sort of hybrid type defender, chock full of power.
With pick 62, Richmond have selected Luke English from Perth.
Head over the ball, work rate. We love that, Mick, and you would have seen a fair bit of him. And I've seen him play very well for WA at 18s level this year.
I couldn't be happier for this young fella. He is one of the best young men I've come across in football. He's out of the Perth Footy Club. Michael Pratt and Peter Breer have done a great job. He's as good as they come. When you talk professionalism, you know what you're going to get. There's been likenesses drawn with a Matt Prittis type with Luke English. He's just an accumulator, but he won the Jack Clark medal in WA as a 17-year-old for the best and fairest player in the Colts competition. And just work ethic. An outstanding runner, huge tank, and somebody that averaged 29 disposals, 4 tackles and 5 clearances across the year. So he will bring character, he'll bring culture, and just a fantastic level head to the Richmond Football Club.
And a bit of a bargain buy as well, according to our rankings. We had him at the lab, Fox Sports Lab had him at number 50. Just quickly on the Saints trade a couple of moments ago. So judging by that, they've picked up a couple of 4th-round selections for next year. I wonder whether they've got any academy prospects or even father-sons that are looking to get some points for the Saints. But we've got Collingwood up next. They've got pick 63. Certainly Luke English sounded very promising based on what you've said. You've seen him up close, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And every time I've spoken to Luke and had contact with him, he's just been a brilliant person. He's actually a pleasure to be able to call a mate. So he will be absolutely over the moon at the moment. His heart and soul belongs in football. He's thrown everything into it and gets the most out of himself. He's no frills. You're not going to get somebody that's going to do all the tricks and have the bells and whistles. Yeah. He's not that type of player, but what he will do is he'll go and find the footy and he'll find it a number of times over the course of a game.
And the yo-yo's the new test at Combine. He ran second to Sam Walsh in the yo-yo, so he's elite with that endurance. We just call it ball magnet footy nous. You know, that's what the game's about. He just can attract the footy, work hard to get it, uses that elite running ability to rack them up. And averaged 23 disposals at Colts level this year.
Well, we're hearing there's a potential trade coming forward now. We don't know whether it's Collingwood for a current pick or maybe a future one, but we do see Collingwood on the phone and we see Carlton on the phone. We haven't spoken about Carlton for a while, have we? They've been off the board since very early after their active Thursday night at Marvel Stadium. The trade is in. Collingwood pick 63. Let's see what's happened.
The irony of pick 63, Tom, is Tyson Goldsack was a former pick 63 for Collingwood, so if it has been traded away, interesting to see where that will land.
Playing on next year, Tyson Goldsack, after doing his ACL, and I thought he was going to be out for the year. I think he probably did, but he came back and remarkably played in the grand final and played a very good role late in the final series. So an Adelaide-Carlton trade, they've got together again and they've formulated a trade. It's all late picks, but again, the Crows and the Blues doing the tango.
Multiple.
Okay, so multiple trades involved in this one. As we see, the clock will pause.
Yep. So if it is a multiple trade, then the clock does stop. That is the AFL regulation. Pretty happy Carlton room.
And they need to get the permission of Ken Wood that oversees all of this for the multiple trade to get through, so that might take a couple of moments. It'll be submitted, checked out by the AFL. It might involve future selections, so the complexity would mean that they'd need to tick it off before it can go ahead.
What will we do without modern technology, boys? The mobile phones are running hot, aren't they?
I thought you were about to say corded phones with modern technology. They've been around for a while. You're right, though. They are all linked up in the corporate suites, and they're chatting quite regularly, but I can't imagine they're all the best of friends after quite a heated trade period, so they've probably got to put that to one side and do what's best right now.
And here is that next trade as we saw it flash up on the board.
Collingwood and the Hawks, Mick.
Yeah, so Hawthorn keen to get up. As you see there on the board, they've gained pick 63 and a round 5 future selection, and Collingwood have let go of that pick 63 but will acquire a future 4th round selection. So the Hawks obviously keen to get up. They haven't entered the draft until late in the piece.
Well, some of the smartest minds in the room, and Hawthorn now with pick 63.
And the Giants get 5 minutes now.
Now we've got a big pending now for Matthew Walker. It's all happening here. Trades, bids. He's a Giants Academy player, Matthew Walker. Tell us about him, Kevin.
Yeah, related to Andrew Walker, who's a staff at Carlton, of course. Indigenous boy from across the Murray Bushrangers region that loved a couple of games I saw from him this year as, well, the 5th and 6th type role, pushing up from forward, great hands and running ability. A boy that looked outstanding as a 15, 16-year-old from New South Wales that had a couple of setbacks, but then really showed in a couple of games this year that he had AFL traits. Just as that marking forward, medium size, probably about the 188 centimetre boy.
Hawthorn have selected Matthew Walker from the Murray Bushrangers after the GWS Giants passed.
Okay, the second pass of the draft. Surprised or a fair enough call?
No, look, I'm not surprised. I'm actually surprised to see Matthew Walker get an opportunity. He's had an abundance of talent as a 16-year-old, probably hasn't quite developed over the last couple of years like everyone expected him to, but what we saw at 16 was elite. He's that really difficult matchup. He's that in-between size. He's not a key forward. He's also by no stretch small, so he's certainly got a lot of ability, and I'm sure the Hawks will be hoping they can drag that out of him of what we did see 2 years ago. Talking to Luke Powell last night about some NAB AFL Academy players that were left on the board, he was one that he was keen to see get an opportunity.
With pick 64, the Adelaide Crows have selected Lachlan Scholl from the Calder Cannons.
Yeah, Lockie Scholl's, he's the son of Brett Scholl. Brett played at Carlton, probably 35, 40 games. And this boy, he's a running machine, a great user of the ball. Played for Vic Metro, plays at Calder. So whether it's a cross half-back, he's normally the designated kicker, kicking in and sets the play up with that kicking ability. But it's his repeat efforts and running that separates him. Yeah.
And he grew up supporting Carlton. So his dad's cousins were Craig and Brad Scholl. So he's got some good bloodlines there. Lachlan Scholl, he's off to the Crows, who've, well, they've had a reasonable draft so far, it seems. We'll have to assess it at the end. Make sure you stay tuned to Fox Footy. We'll be recapping your club's draft picks. We're not done yet because Geelong, they've got pick 65 and there's less than 4.5 minutes on the clock. So they've got a bit of time to sort it out. Stephen Wells and co.
As we see there on screen with Lachlan Scholl too, the intercept marking isn't vitally important. They saw Jake Lever head out the door. I'll be hoping Scholl can replace him.
With pick 65, Geelong have selected Darcy Fort from Central District.
Wow, there's a boy going back to Geelong. He was a Geelong Falcon ruckman 4 years ago, I think.
Yep.
Took time to mature, over 200 centimetres. Had a very good year in the Sandful as a mature age ruckman now, and heading back to the region where he was developed, back to Geelong.
He played for South Barwon, didn't he, in the Geelong Football League? He's 25 years old. So again, clubs waiting for other people to pick up, to develop their players and bring them back.
Yeah, but then his time in the Sandful has also helped him mature. So originally from South Barwon, on the way through the Falcons, and then some experience in SA, and that we know that about the ruckman. They're going to take some time to mature, and great to see that 3 or 4 have got a chance at slightly older level.
Kev, are we starting to see a bit of a shortage of ruckmen again? We know there was a discussion probably 3 to 4 years ago, and we started to look for other ways to address that through the USA Combine and the like. Are we starting to head back in that direction, that there is a bit of a shortage?
Well, I think there is, because we tend to rotate the ruckman, the backup ruckman around the clubs, don't we? But eventually you get to a point where we're going to get some fresh stock in there. So that's why it's good to see Briggs and Bailey Williams, those sorts of boys, get their chance. But I wonder whether the new rules and the way in which it centre bounces at 6 and 6 and it spreads out again, that you're going to have tall targets.
And the high rotations as well probably means there's been a dearth of them because the clubs are only playing one ruckman. But you're right, the new rules might actually bring 2 ruckmen back, which is really only what West Coast did this year from memory. I'm not sure if any other clubs played 2 proper specialist ruckmen.
Yeah, I think to Collingwood as well. We're talking about both grand finals with Brodie Grundy
and Cox, you're right.
and Mason Cox, which were pretty formidable. But I think it's important for one of those ruckmen to be able to go forward and have an impact.
Carlton has selected Finbar O'Dwyer from the Murray Bushrangers.
Tell us about him, Kevin. It's a terrific name again from the Murray Bushrangers.
He wouldn't be Irish, would he? With a name like that, fantastic again. Murray Bushrangers is one of the most productive areas in the whole of Australia for producing talent, has been for the 30-odd years of the draft. You mentioned Sandringham, Dandenong, those areas, yes, the metropolitan, but we're talking a country area and big blokes over the years too. But Finbar's a versatile type of player that's had a terrific year. Leon Higgins, the coach up there, has done a great job with them, and they've got their challenges too, with the boys spread right over a very vast area from Shepparton right up to north of the Murray River. They gather them virtually about one night a week for training, and quite a number have got through now, and some have gone on to be stars, like Oliver from a couple of years ago, a superstar for them.
Well, there's a potential trade brewing again. Carlton with pick 67. They're never far from the action, the Blues, aren't they? And they haven't been this year, and again, during the trade period and now the draft, well, both days of the draft, they've been front and centre. Let's see what they're going to conjure up. They've got pick 67 on the table, and the trade is in. And it's with the Saints, I'm hearing as well. So that's it again, the Saints and the Blues doing that deal.
Yeah, so clearly, once again, I think the Saints see the value in this year's draft and are keen to strike pretty quickly on a particular type of player that's currently sitting on the board. So it's interesting.
So they've moved up from 75.
Yeah, absolutely, as we can see there, and also traded a future 4th-round pick to the Blues to acquire that pick 67.
This is where trading espionage might come in, or recruiting espionage, because I wonder whether the Saints have intel that a club from now until 75 is interested in a player and they said, no, we need to get him now. Is that the sort of thing that recruiters and list managers do, Kevin?
Well, I think there's coat pullers around in this business as well as there is in the races, where you hear rumours and you think that might be going to happen. And sometimes they do react a bit like that, clubs, because they believe something else is about to occur. So it can happen. Rumours do exist in this business.
Surely, Tom, you can't tell me that information's being leaked out of the AFL.
Oh, not for me to say. The pick is in.
With pick 67, St Kilda have selected Robert Young from North Adelaide.
Well, Robert Young from North Adelaide, another Adelaide prospect gone to the Saints. They've got a few now to go with Luke Dunstan, who's already there. What can we tell you about Robert Young?
Well, it is a surprise choice, but look, once we get late, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
We've got about 5,000 players playing in state leagues around Australia that really give themselves a chance. We test a couple of hundred, but wider than that, the clubs are looking at all of these boys, which is fantastic. One club has seen something special, enough to call him.
Terrific stuff for Robert Young, off to the Saints. Sarah Ollie, she's speaking to Curtis Taylor, who's now a North Melbourne Football Club player.
So, Curtis, how are you feeling? It was quite a wait there, but now you know you're at North, you're going to be an AFL player.
Yeah, I'm absolutely over the moon. I'm really stoked. I think it was a long wait just waiting with Mum and Dad, but now that it's happened, I'm that excited to get into it.
Now, there are 3 influential people I want to ask you about. The first being Mick McGuan. What influence has he had on you?
Oh, massive. Since I've been a 12-year-old kid, Mick's been giving me little tips here and there, just little things to help me with my footy, and I can't thank him enough for what he's done.
And what about Cam Rayner? I believe you know him quite well as well?
Yeah, Cam's my best mate, so that whole time that I was waiting, he was messaging me. I think he's more nervous than I was, so we're just, over the moon. I can't thank Cam enough either.
Pick 68, Geelong have selected
What a lovely
Jake
friend,
Tarker,
and I can't let you
South
go
Adelaide.
without asking about your uncle, Warnie. Come on, I mean, does that mean backyard cricket on Christmas Day with Warnie?
I was speaking to Jacko, my cousin, so just before, he was stoked. He sent me a message, so I'm just rapt. It's been good.
Well, congratulations. You're a Roo, you're an AFL player. Go and enjoy it.
Thank you. Thanks heaps.
Thank you to Sarah Ollie from foxfooty.com.au. Superb work out there at Marvel Stadium. And Jake Tarker has been picked up by the Cats. Tell us about Robert Young, because he's someone that wasn't necessarily high on the draft board, Nick.
No, he's played 60 games of SANFL footy at North Adelaide and part of their premiership winning season. I just get the sense the Saints have shifted a little bit. They've gone to the draft a number of years, brought in some really young talent. I just get the sense now they're trying to build some mature age players around that group so that guys like Nick Caulfield and Hunter Clark can actually come in with a little bit more support.
And while Sarah Ollie was speaking to Curtis Taylor, Geelong did trade up to collect Jake Tarker with pick 68. And the pick is in for West Coast. And they've passed. That's the first pass we've had. So now North Melbourne are up with pick 69.
We'll just mention Jake Tarker there. The Cats have picked a small forward there. He's got some tricks, this boy. I've seen him play a terrific game where he turned half chances into goals at Sandford under 18 level this year. Averaged a couple of goals a game too, which is a pretty good effort. And he's quick. He tested in our state combine level, elite in the agility, around the 8 seconds around the AFL agility run, and then 2.95 for 20 metres. So a boy of 18 years of age, 175 centimetres, a small forward.
I think you'll find too that pass there from the West Coast Eagles, they've now got their own team in the waffle competition. They might just want to open up a few more spots on the rookie list and look for some mature age talent to bring in to actually bolster that state league team and allow some of the younger listed players
North
to
Melbourne
develop.
selected father-son nominee Joel Crocker from the Sandringham Dragons.
That's what we've been waiting for, Kevin, and we've got it.
That's right, and so you can do that. If no one bids, you can take him. And Joel, he might be a hidden gem in all of this because he's injured in his whole 18th year, but at 17, it was just a couple of games I saw elite talent from this boy across half forward. He can play half back as well. It was one of the futures games that I spotted his unique abilities. Of course, Darren was a terrific player at it was VFL level back in those days, and he's tutored him well. So they're just investing in, I suppose, time that he's overcome his injuries, and we see elite talent now joining North Melbourne. They've done well in this draft with the Bloodlines.
Yeah, very smart user of the ball, and early days, as Kev mentioned, he was highly rated, Joel Crocker, and at times we thought, are North Melbourne going to be able to get Taron Thomas, Bailey Scott, Joel Crocker all in the same draft? What's it going to take for them to accrue enough points to be able to select them? So to get Joel through obviously unfortunate circumstances with the injury that late in the draft's just a bonus for the Kangaroos.
And we should probably point out David Noble as well, sitting at the end of the table there with the sheets of paper to Dom Ambrogio's right. Has been a very successful football administrator at Adelaide, and now he's at the Brisbane Lions doing a good job. I wonder who the Lions are going to go for here. They've had a clear plan this draft, haven't they? In fact, probably the last couple of drafts, they've had a clear plan, just whoever's left on the board.
Yeah, well, the other one sitting in the room there is Leon Harris, who's been an absolute legend of Victorian football and was the talent manager of the Vic Country region for a long, long time.
And a Lions player, of course, in the Fitzroy Lions days. One of the most courageous players in the game. I think he won that award on a number of occasions. The Mork, as they called him.
And the pass from the Brisbane Lions. They're not going to take anyone at all. So we're going to start seeing a few more passes now. And this, again, is probably where the players, the young kids, start to get a little bit more nervous because all of a sudden clubs have the option to take them and maybe don't have the room on their list to take them, or they just decide not to and they go elsewhere. But Carlton now with pick 70. So North Melbourne's clearly had a strategy as well. They've picked up Aaron Hall and Jared Pollock, as well as Jasper Pittard, and now they've got Joel Crocker. Where do you see their list at? What do they need, and what have they tried to do this trade period in this draft, Nick?
Well, I've thought they've needed that outside class. We know the Cunningtons and Zeebles and these absolute competitive beasts that they've got on the inside. So I thought they needed to add that outside class and get some really good users by foot into the club, and they've certainly done that with the names you just previously mentioned.
Here come the Blues.
With pick 70, Carlton have selected father-son nominee Ben Silvani from the Oakley Chargers.
Fantastic. Another Silvani joins the Blues, and
you can smile, can't he, Stephen?
He's the biggest of the boys. He's bigger than Sauce. At 196 centimetre boy, plays both ends of the ground. Played nationals for Vic Metro, but I loved a game he played at the Oakley Chargers this year as a forward. Took about 10 marks in this game where he was the first to move. You can see that he's a very competitive boy. He's got a great natural leap. Sometimes he's a bit like Sauce. He looks to, you see with a bandy leg, struggling to get over the ground, but he tested quick. He did 3.01 seconds for the 20 metres, so he's got some natural athletic ability about him. He'll be a project player, but I like what he saw this year at underage level, playing for the Oakley Chargers and for Vic Metro.
I tell you the most frightening thing, boys, there's still another one on the way as well. There's Tom Silvani, who's only 15 years of age, so we're not quite done yet at the Carlton Football Club, but We saw a joke shared there between Paul Brodie and Stephen Silvani. I wouldn't have minded being a fly on the wall in that conversation.
No, if there's any doubt that Ben Silvani is good enough to be on the list, I think just go and watch some of his highlights, because I think he's clearly good enough. And Stephen Silvani's now got his 2 boys at the club. We've got a pass at the Western Bulldogs, much like Melbourne with Todd Viney and Jack Viney at the club. There's been a bit of this around, haven't there, with father-son selections in recent years?
Yeah, the other thing that was impressive, Kev, for me with Ben Silvani is his speed from 0 to 10. We've spoken a lot about the speed over 20 over the course of this draft, but it's his speed off the mark and that ability to create separation when he plays forward that's really important, allows him to get out on the lead and makes it difficult for defenders to actually get there to spoil.
Hey, have a look at this. This is unbelievable vision. This is Tom Berry, the brother of Jared. His reaction when he got drafted by the Brisbane Lions to play alongside his brother. Try not to enjoy this.
Pick 36, Brisbane Lions have selected Thomas Berry.
You can't help but smile. That's dreams come true for that young man, Jared Berry's younger brother, Tom
And they're
Berry.
all the Brisbane boys, of course.
Yeah,
so
of
Jared
course.
would have been amongst them. Cameron Rayner, we can see Alex Witherden. So they weren't in Victoria watching, were they? Just in their shorts. They're obviously up in Queensland enjoying the moment that the Berries get back together.
And we're just speaking about the Silvanis a little bit earlier as well. Jack Silvani broke down in tears. I'd imagine there'd be quite a few players like that when Jack Silvani was drafted by Carlton. You've got to say, though, Tom Berry's going to be a very good player from what we see. And Jared Berry is already a very good player. The Brisbane Lions doing an excellent job. Gold Coast Suns, they're next up with pick 71. They've got 4.5 minutes left on the clock, and they'll be deep in conversations what they do with this selection.
Yeah, starting to see a number of clubs pass now, as you mentioned, Tom, and that'll allow them to free up an extra spot or two potentially on a rookie list, which obviously the rookie draft taking place later this afternoon, where I think it's a great initiative by the AFL to bring that rookie draft in closer to the national draft so that boys will actually know their fate and can move on with their lives.
No Oscar Brownless yet, Kevin? Can't be far away if he is going to be selected today at all.
Well, I think he'll end up on their list. I suppose
Yeah.
they've got the option now for the primary list and the rookie list a wee bit later, but I think he's good enough to get there.
We'll wait on Oscar Brownless, of course, the son of Billy Brownless, the Geelong Football Club great and very powerful forward in his day as well, I'm sure. I didn't see him live, Mick, but I'm sure you two did see him a number of times, kick plenty of goals. And those are the players remaining. Which of those do you think are most unlucky at this stage not to be selected?
Well, they're really the prospects, the long-term ones that you mentioned earlier, Tom. You look at those project-type players, so they're the type of player that I think, Kev, fit in that 50-50 basket that we speak about. If they get taken, you're not surprised. If they get overlooked in the national draft and find a spot as a rookie, you're also not surprised.
Yeah, and I think there'll be, amongst the rookies taken a bit later today, normally 20 to 25 new talent will get a go, so many of the boys on that list will get their opportunity in just a couple of hours' time. James Rendell's an interesting one. Matt Rendell's boy did very well late in the year, boy from Sandy. He was on that list, loved the way he's developed. After injuries in his 17th year, he started to really unfold as a player, I thought, late in the year, playing at TAC Cup level.
What do you make of Gold Coast Hall so far with Rankin, Lukosius, Ben King and McLennan?
Yeah, they've had an outstanding draft, haven't they? I just felt the way the cards fell last night and the door opened for them to get Ben King, so they would have been absolutely licking their lips, because I don't think they would have expected him to be there at the time he was. They've had a very, very good draft. We all know the challenges that the Gold Coast Suns face, but they've replenished the stocks and they've got some absolute match winners and once-in-a-generation type talent through the door.
Pick is in.
With pick 71, Gold Coast Suns have selected Academy nominee Caleb Graham from Palm Beach, Currumbin.
Not a bad part of the world, is it, Palm Beach?
No, fantastic. This boy can play both ends. He's a swingman, play both ends of the ground. kicked 6 in an academy game this year as a forward, but maybe we see him as a key defender in the main. Lovely size, genuine, the 95 centimetre mark boy that still learning the game, and they're investing back in their own, which is terrific to see late, to give them opportunities. They could have left him to a rookie spot. To put him on the primary list is terrific, and Caleb Graham has been a boy emerging over the last couple of years as a potential key position player in the AFL.
He played in a futures game, didn't he, 12 months ago down at GMHBA Stadium, and he was one of those ones that you just likened a little bit to an Eric Hipwood in terms of his size and his ranginess. Just took a little bit longer to develop, but great to see the Gold Coast Suns investing in their own talent.
And studying exercise science at Griffith University as well, and I'd imagine he'd be able to continue that course now he's staying up north. The Adelaide Crows, they've passed, so now we've up to Essendon with pick 72. The Crows, that's their haul so far with Jones, McHenry, Hamill and Scholl. 2 picks in the top 20, then another one at 30. They, of course, would have loved to get up and get Lukosius or a Rankin or a South Australian prospect, even a Rosie. They weren't able to do that, but they've still had a reasonable draft.
Well, the challenge is on now, isn't it? Because don't worry, they'll be targeting those boys over the next couple of years. So the game is well and truly on for the Gold Coast Suns to try and secure that talent long term so that the Power and the Crows don't pick them off.
That's the worry, isn't it? I mean, is it about winning or... And the pick is in for Essendon. We'll just hold that thought. They've already taken 2 players.
With pick 72, Essendon have selected Braden Ham from the Geelong Falcons.
Another 19-year-old. Terrific. This boy had a great year. Half back, half forward. Power packed, you'd call him. He's quite a pocket rocket and a great vertical leap. I've seen him play some terrific games for the Falcons and can play multiple roles. So I think performance has been very good in his 19th year.
Bit of X factor, Kevin.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Essendon seem to be picking up a lot of players who've got a little bit of pizzazz, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the strength of their list, and that's the job that Adrian Dodoro's done over the last 2 to 3 years. He's built the strength of a list where you get your core group of players in, then you can actually look outside the box a little bit.
With pick 73, Port Adelaide have selected Riley Grundy from Sturt.
The brother of Brodie Grundy. Now, how good a player is this young fella, Kevin?
Well, he's a key defender, this boy, just learning the caper, but he's super competitive, as you would expect, being the brother of Brodie. Played nationals for SA, so again, we're 11 or 12 boys out of that team, and he played on the big tall forwards and did not give them an inch either. He was all over them. Still learning. As I say, not a massive possession winner at the moment, but his competitiveness. He's 195 centimetres, not as big as Brodie at the minute, but I think he's got the heart to really be a player, the way he played this year.
I'm ecstatic, boys, absolutely ecstatic. I've been speaking to Brodie Grundy a bit over the last few days. He's been very anxious about his brother's chances, and Mum was adamant she wanted him to remain in Adelaide.
With pick 74, Geelong have selected father-son nominee Oscar Brownless from the Geelong Falcons.
There we go. The Brownless name continues at Geelong, Kevin. You can't help but smile.
Oh, fantastic. Now, Billy didn't get out of the forward 50 in his day.
he would argue with that.
He was a marking forward, we know, and played with Gary Ablett Sr., of course. Oscar's a different kettle of fish completely. He's a running machine. He's got the footy smarts. He works so hard up and down the ground, whether it be as a medium midfielder or a medium forward. Great user of the ball. He kicked one of the goals of the year at under 18 level on the MCG, and a great goal from the pocket. So all of the things that we talk about, footy intelligence, footy nous, and then elite running capacity is what Oscar can do. There's that goal.
I probably looked 12 months ago and had a few question marks about his level of competitiveness, Oscar, but geez, he's addressed it really well over the last 12 months and now shows the ability to go inside and win his own ball, to hold his own when competing in the air. So full credit to what he's done over the last 12 months. And I still love the romance. Isn't it great to see Carlton call out Silvani and Geelong call out Oscar Brownless, not wait for somebody else to bid on him, but to give these boys their moment in the sun.
Well, while we've been talking, the Swans and the Giants are both passed, meaning the Hawks, they've leapt up to pick 75. See what they're going to do, if they're going to pass as well or just try to get another player into their club on their senior list. You're right, the romance is very important in football. It's where the stories and the narratives come from. It's not all just about winning and losing, although that is a significant part of it. It's about the stories behind that, the subplots. And Oscar Brownless next year will be a very It will be a really important story for the club. And a pass there by Hawthorn. So Melbourne now with pick 75, and the pass is coming thick and fast. Speaking of Oscar Brownless, I just want you to tell me about his under-18 carnival, because we saw the highlights, but what does he do away from the ball? What sort of player is he in the clinches and around the team?
Well, I think he's a great teammate. That stands out. You can see the way he worked in with the likes of Sam Walsh, Ned McHenry, boys that were taking yesterday. Great contributor in the, I suppose, the selfless running he does too, to support, to get over and help out. And he works up and down the length of the ground. At times you'll see him work it in defence, be in the chain as he ends up taking the hand pass on the 50 and kicking a goal. I've seen him do that in a number of occasions. So it's that elite running, repeat running ability that he's got that separates him from some of the other boys.
And you look at that scout profile with a contested possession, that's what I spoke about earlier. Full credit to Oscar for the way he's addressed that in his game.
Here come the D's.
Pick 75, Melbourne have selected Academy nominee Toby Bedford from the Dandenong Stingrays.
That's what you were talking about before, Kevin. Toby Bedford, he's a fleet-footed player. Tell us more about him.
Yeah, speed's electric. Love that. We talked about a game at Geelong too that he played for Vic Country, where he just left him in his wake. So it's that nimble feet that separates him. Elusive as well. That game, he had 20 disposals against WA at national level. That's where I thought I'm seeing a guy that will get drafted later in the year. And a boy from Rosebud played in that premiership side with Dandenong Stingrays as well.
Do we assume that Melbourne are done now that they've selected an academy player? They do have pick 83 or thereabouts as well?
Yeah, I would think so. I'd expect them to be done. And as Kev mentioned, originally Toby Bedford from down the Mornington Peninsula, a Rosebud boy. Both his parents still live in Fitzroy Crossing, which is remarkable. But I know Craig Black, the former coach of the Dandenong Stingrays, and now development coach at the Collingwood Football Club, big rap on him, said his defensive pressure is outstanding.
So it looks as if Richmond and Essendon are out. They've both just passed on their most recent picks, and Port Adelaide now have pick 76. So the club's slowly filtering out, it seems, metaphorically at this stage of Marvel Stadium. I'd imagine there's still a few more selections to come and a few more kids still to have their dreams made.
Yeah, and so there'll be a pause after this as the clubs will spend another hour or so assessing what they've done and then come back for the pre-season draft, the rookie draft today. So it's a long day for the clubs to ponder the next few players they may get onto their list a little bit later today.
Port Adelaide have selected Boyd Woodcock from North Adelaide.
Fantastic. This is the boy that had a remarkable second half of the year in the Sandful. Played in the premiership side with Connor Rosie. Kicked 3 in that premiership game. But he kicked multiple goals on a number of occasions. A couple of bags of 4 and 3. Very, well, obviously smart around the goals, but forward line pressure he brought to the table as well. And no surprise to see him get up, but surprised to see him so late.
Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it amazing? An interesting thing to look at. Does success improve your chances of getting drafted? We've seen Williamstown, a successful club. We've seen North Adelaide win a premiership. We're seeing multiple players come out of those football clubs. So clearly,
it's the same as coaches, isn't it? Really, Alistair Clarkson's brigade that have sort of flirted all around the AFL since then. It's quite an amazing record, and you'd have to suggest it is the case at lower levels. The Cats, they've just passed as well. And now Melbourne has a pick in with number 77, although this may be a pass as well. Yes, it will be a pass. You mentioned the pre-season draft before, Kevin. Can you explain what the function of that is nowadays? Because it may not be as important as it once was.
Yeah, you wonder whether it still has a role. There's been very few players taken in it, but it gives the club a chance to put someone on their primary list. It might have been an out-of-contract player but I think very few have been taken in recent years. I think the importance of the next couple of hours is certainly the rookies.
Just seeing Port go through an in-depth conversation with their list management group here. We're just having a look at what's still on the board. Like we're seeing a lot of clubs pass. Now, for the people watching at home, once a club does pass in the draft, that means they're out. So even if there are selections further on in the draft, the club will no longer be in a position to participate in the national draft.
I just wish they'd just turn the whiteboard around just a little bit for us. So the pick is in for the Gold Coast Suns. And they'll pass as well. So they're out. The Bulldogs up next. We haven't seen the Bulldogs in a while. I wonder what Port Adelaide are considering at the moment. I wonder what they could possibly be contemplating.
Yeah, well, it gets down to that. So do they take someone in the national draft that then goes onto their primary list, or do they let them go and hope to pick them up in the rookie draft? So they're the sorts of discussions that will be taking place at the moment.
Well, we're just running up.
Do they actually risk missing that player? Do they take him onto their primary list? How does that all play out?
You'd imagine they'd still have a big list of players that could potentially be taken in the rookie draft, and the North Melbourne pick is in, and North Melbourne pass again. So there's probably very few clubs left at this stage. Just getting right towards the back end of the NAB AFL 2018 draft. Hope you've enjoyed the coverage so far. We'll be going through all your clubs, and we'll be going through your clubs just to see who you've selected, and we'll have the analysis of Mick Ablett and, of course, Kevin Sheen.
Brad Lloyd we see there in the background, the newly acquired GM of footy at the Carlton Football Club. So very, very happy group in that room, and full of smiles. They've had a pretty good 2018 draft. Your biggest surprise so far, Kevin? Can I put you on the spot there?
Well, I love Boyd Woodcock, the boy we talked about as the last one picked, a boy that can actually be an impact player in a senior final in front of 40,000 people and being the best few players on the ground and be the last one taken. I would have thought that he would have gone a lot earlier. Small forwards are certainly in vogue. I think maybe 10 have been picked up overall. And just the way he finished the last 8 games of the year, I would have thought it might have been a lock a wee bit earlier than that. But that's the nature of it. We all see things quite differently.
Yeah, we do, and that's the beauty of it. Your biggest shock, Mick?
Bailey Scott. I can't believe Bailey got that far out in the draft, as we see a former
Fox Footy expert,
Glenn Luff. I actually bumped into Glenn Luff over in Fremantle holidaying with his family, so just before he really got engrossed in his new role at the North Melbourne Footy Club. But that was the one for me. Bailey Scott, he's got elite running patterns. He's an outstanding person. Got leadership type traits, so for him to get out to the point he did, and for the bid not to come until late from the Geelong Football Club, I was quite surprised, because I think he's got a bright AFL future.
And who are we shocked that hasn't gone yet, Kevin? Are there any names that you think are really struggling?
Collingwood have selected Academy nominee Tuneza Bosena-Valanye from the Oakley Chargers.
It's a great story. Tell us about him, Kevin.
Well, speed is what they've got here. And he's Joffa's, grandson, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, Joffa's grandson.
I thought it was a joke when I saw that story.
I couldn't believe it. But, amazing, I suppose, blistering small forward. I've seen him play for the midfield as well from the Oakley Chargers, and again played for the finals. I think he's a place getter, high up in the Morris medal. He certainly stood out with that great running ability that he has, and that's brilliant for the game to see him get his opportunity.
And he might have thought his opportunity would have passed him by in this draft, but the Pies have come late and they've swooped.
Yeah, they certainly did. Another one that you mentioned in terms of surprises that hasn't been picked up, Dylan O'Reilly's a WA player, son of Stephen O'Reilly, who fell a couple of games short of Dylan being eligible father-son. He had an unbelievable year as a 17-year-old in Western Australia, and battled a little bit with injury this year, didn't quite hit the heights that he was hoping to, so surprised to see Dylan still on the board, and someone that you'd expect might get an opportunity through a rookie list, potentially with Fremantle, where Stephen is a board member.
And it doesn't mean it's the end, of course. We know that they've got VFL football to go to, or any state league football around the country, really. But the pre-season draft and the rookie draft, they're not far away. So it's not necessarily the end for the players who haven't been picked up, but there's been a few surprises so far, and you've articulated them well. Who would you have liked to see pick up, Kevin? Is there someone that you think, this guy needs to be picked up because he's going to be a very good AFL player?
Well, a boy that's got great ability is Sydney Stack, a boy from Western Australia. And he showed that in the national championships with his ball-winning ability. He's got great hands, head over it. But you need to actually be super professional all of the time. So there's a bit of a doubt on whether he could live up to the standards of that might have cost him a spot at the minute. But he's good enough to be there. So I think I hope he can learn a lesson from maybe the disappointment of it, to say, well, gee, if I want it badly enough, I've got the talent to actually get there. And that can be a message to a number of boys that... nothing, in the finish, hard work can really create a great career for you if you want it badly enough.
But you're spot on, Kev. This is where the clubs have drawn the line now. It is really important, and character is playing a massive part in selecting players and young men getting an opportunity, because it is a tough industry. And I say it all the time, you don't have to be an angel, but you've got to be a good person. The game's challenging, the environment's tough. So for young players out there that are talented, that think that might be enough, they better think again, because the reality is that clubs are now overlooking elite talent. And Sydney Stack has played league football in WA. He was an All-Australian this year at the Under-18 National Championships and has been to this point and looks likely to be overlooked in the national draft, probably based around the character type stuff that Kevin's talking about.
Well, give us a character versus skill ratio, Kevin, because we've all got friends and people we know that have great character but can't play the game at all. But equally, you've got to be able to play the game a little bit to get drafted, don't you?
Yeah, you need talent. Talent's number one, but, the head and the heart's the key. I think Michael Long said it one day. How do you measure the head and the heart? Which means your commitment to want to do something badly enough. They're the ones that get there, that have got this burning desire to succeed.
So where do you see the ratio, though? Where does it fit?
Well, I think it's a 50-50 in the finish, because you can, if you've got the head and the heart, you can overcome your deficiencies. You'll work fanatically to become better at the winning of the ball or the use of the ball. You'll bridge the gap between talented, not so talented, through having the head and the heart to do it. So I think that's the key, and that's the thing that we just can't measure completely at 18. Have all the tests in the world, but it doesn't necessarily give you a decent readout on the head and the heart of a boy at 20, 21 years of age that wants something badly enough. He'll do anything to get there. And that's the attitude you need to have in the finish.
Yeah, but just in the case of Sydney Stack, Sydney's a really good person. He's a good kid, but it's the reliability, the consistency and the commitment to actually turning up to the appointments, to turning up to training, to getting your diet right. They're the question marks that clubs have on these young players now. And it is tough. There's no doubt about it. I say it all the time. I feel sorry for these young players now with the pressure that they're under. But the reality is, if clubs aren't confident in you as a person, the talent can be overlooked. I probably weight it a little bit more heavily than what Kev does. I think
which way?
Character.
Yeah.
I think character is probably, I'd be getting up around 65%. I think if you're a good person, I think some of the other things generally tend to fall into place. But if you're a little bit erratic, and I use the term all the time, can you trust them?
Yeah.
And if you can't definitively say, yes, I can trust the player, geez, he's going to struggle in an AFL environment.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? And it's very hard to measure, of course, and it's probably no more important than now when we've got the eyes and the ears of the nation actually focusing on these players via the media and also via the public. Melbourne's just passed again, of course. They're out of the draft. There's 2 more picks left, and of course you can stick around on Fox Footy because we're going to go through all the draft picks from start to finish and analyse your club and see how they've gone this draft period with experts Kevin Sheen and Mick Ablett. We hope you're enjoying the coverage. It's certainly been great bringing it to you because there's so many young kids that have had their lives changed in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, there is. Dreams have been made, haven't they? And naturally, some hearts have been broken. Like I said earlier, at least the players have only got a couple of hours now. They'll sit back, they'll take a deep breath with the hope of being selected in the rookie draft, which, as we've all seen, I mean, I look down at my page at the moment, I've got a note here, someone like Jeremy McGovern was originally taken as a rookie. So I don't think, to be honest, I don't think it means a hell of a lot to be overlooked in the national draft because opportunities do still exist.
Yeah, the pick is in now. I think the Dogs might have picked someone up here with number 78.
With pick 78, the Western Bulldogs have selected William Hayes from the Footscray VFL side. With the finalisation of that selection, it now concludes the 2018 NAB AFL draft. Thank you.
Will Hayes from Footscray, the son of David Hayes.
Unbelievable.
Kevin.
Yeah, the best and fairest winner. I missed the call on that. That's fantastic. And, well, a little bit of racing blood in the AFL world. And he's been a terrific player at Footscray, the aligned club of the Western Bulldogs now for a number of years and gets his opportunity. A ball winner, you know, runs straight at it, head over it, all of the heart and the head that we talked about that Michael Long recommends. So great to see Will Hayes get that chance.
And that's a good story. He's best friends with Zach Merritt as well from Melbourne Grammar. So they do know how to play football, those guys. And Will Hayes has got a twin brother as well who also played with him at Footscray. That's the last pick of the draft. Mick, pick number 78. And you can see the Bulldogs would be pretty happy with that selection as well, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look back too. A kid like Jake Waterman was taken at pick 77. So certainly some opportunities exist for these players, and that's not saying they can't step in and play ahead of someone taken in the top 10.
Can't wait to see them all play next year. But in the meantime, we'll recap your club, all 18 clubs, and the players you selected in the 2018 NAB AFL draft. Stick around.
Pick 36, Brisbane Lions have selected Thomas Berry.
What a brilliant reaction that is from Tom Berry, the younger brother of Jared Berry, being picked up by the Brisbane Lions, and he'll be up in Queensland next year alongside his brother. Let's go through all the clubs, because there's been heaps of selections, as there has been every year, but it's been really interesting with the trades and the live draft picks as well. Let's start with the Adelaide Crows. Kevin, I'll start with you, and Mick, you jump in whenever you want. Where do you see the Crows draft, and how successful has it been?
If we have a look at their board, I think they've gone for running ability. You look at this, elite runners and smaller players in the main. McHenry, an elite 2K runner, but a link man and a small forward that'll put tackling pressure on. Hamill, I love. The Cade Simpson look-alike, the left footer across half-back. So it's all running ability, kicking ability in that group.
Yeah, and they've got some great character, haven't they? Ned McHenry adds a little bit of cheekiness to the group, so I'm sure him and Eddie Betts will add some life around the footy club. Chase Jones, just an outstanding person. They've got some really good ball users too, I think, Kev.
And 2 Tasmanians in the top 10 as well. Chase Jones, one of them. Let's talk about the Brisbane Lions, because they've had a really busy couple of months or so.
As we look at their group there, well, of course,
led by Tom Berry, yeah.
The Berry's the story, but Eli Smith's an interesting one. Joel Smith, remember Joel playing at Hawthorn and at St Kilda, was a terrific player. He's the nephew of Joel. They're a great family up around Yarrawonga. This boy won the best and fairest this year with the Murray Bush Rangers, and a competitive beast through the midfield. The brother, of course, the Berry story is a terrific one. Inside midfielder in Tommy Joyce too. McFadgen, one of the local boys. I think that's a great group. I think they've drafted very well, the Brisbane Lions, with that group I see on the board there now.
Yeah, it's a little bit frightening, isn't it, where they're going, the Brisbane Lions, when you look at that group and the midfield depth it's going to add to get the two big bulls, to get Tom Joyce, and then they add Noah Ransworth, who we said can play a couple of different roles in the midfield, potentially look to play a specific shutdown role on an opposition midfielder. So they've had another good year, the Brisbane Lions.
Well, they're your thoughts. Let's see what David Noble, their footy boss, has to say to foxfooty.com.au. Sarah Ollie.
Well, David, what a good story. Tom Berry joins his brother Jared at the club, and we've just seen some vision there of the Brisbane players. They're ecstatic. How good is that?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's great for the family. You know, Jared has been... Pestering's probably too strong a word, but certainly he's really excited that we've got Tom up to our place, and they were our 1 to 4 year guys on break up at Noosa, so they're pretty excited too.
And you tried to get another brother over in Jared, but the Eagles were party poopers there.
Yeah, unfortunately they didn't sort of read the script very well, did they? But no, look, we had an interest in Jared, but yeah, the Eagles match. But yeah, look, we're really happy with what we've done.
Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
OK, let's talk about Carlton now, led by Sam Walsh, the number 1 pick.
Well, a jet, we called him all of that, and he's going to be a future leader as well. They've got their man. I thought he was the best performer for the year, all underage footy. He captained the Australian under-18s on the MCG and was a star early in the year, and finished up at the end of the year winning the Falcons' Best and Fairest award. I thought he's a very worthy number 1. He'll set high standards at that footy club.
But have they had a good draft, Carlton? Have they done what they should have done?
Yeah, they have. I think all eyes are going to be on Liam Stocker, aren't they, after the late move last night where the trade with the Adelaide Crows took place and they moved up to get their man. So you look on the board there, great to see another Silvani into the AFL system, but they needed midfield depth, and that's exactly what they've got.
Let's touch base this time next year and see where they're at, depending on where they finish on the ladder and where Stocker goes next year. OK, Collingwood Football Club, they've picked up Isaac Quainer, who's an absolute gun, it seems, from what I've seen anyway. But I want your guys' thoughts on where the Magpies went wrong and where they went right in this year's draft.
Well, Quainer is ready to run, I think, as a medium or small defender to play on the very good players. I heard the discussion about him playing on Isaac Rankin last year. Gee, it was a great test for him because Rankin was red hot as a small forward. So he's got the agility to get back on them. He's super competitive. He's got a great natural leap. He'll play on taller players as well. And I love his attitude, a very mature attitude. He'll fit in very well. Will Kelly will take a little bit of time, but love his development this year. So exciting times for the Pies.
I think it played out pretty much how we expected for the Pies, didn't it? We knew they had Isaac Quainer sitting there. We knew they had Will Kelly sitting there as well. So it's gone to script for the Pies. I'd be very happy to get those boys on board. Isaac Quainer is just power. Like, I'm excited for Collingwood fans. I'm excited for the AFL fans to get a really good look at this kid because he's going to carve up some opposition forward lines on the counter-attack off half-back. I'll be interested to see whether they might even push him forward and potentially use him as a marking target because he's very, very strong overhead for his size.
And that afro will win a lot of fans as well, I'm sure. There'll be a lot of afros in the MCG this year. Let's have a listen to Sarah Ollie. She's speaking to Stephen Silvani.
Now, Stephen, when Ben, your son's name, was read out before, you didn't even smile. Are you happy about it?
Oh, yeah, no, obviously happy as a father. So I know Ben would be happy and his mum and his brothers. So, yeah, he's worked reasonably hard to get selected. So, yeah, pretty happy father.
Would there be a few tears at home?
Possibly from his mother. There's every chance of that. But, look, you know, it's obviously, you know, you see the reactions of any parents when their sons get selected in the draft. They're obviously very proud and, yeah, I'm a proud father today.
And when it came to that number one pick, was it always Sam Walsh? We were hearing rumours that maybe Isaac Rankin would be taken, but was it always going to be Walsh?
Look, obviously Sam, footy over the last couple of years has been outstanding, and look, I think there was probably 3 or 4 other players that could have gone number one, but we rated Sam all year, and he played some consistent footy right throughout the year, so we were delighted to pick him with one.
And that bombshell trade move, it kind of tore the night open. Are you backing it in?
Oh, I think we are.
Yeah.
Look, obviously, you know, it's probably the first time it's sort of been done. That's what live trading's about. We obviously rated Liam Stocker very highly, and we think we've got to play through the door 12 months earlier. And you know, obviously, you know, the Crows have got our first round pick, we've got their first round pick, but we see we've got a really good player in the club already, so we'll see where those picks lie next year.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you to Sarah and Sauce. Essendon Football Club, they've had a very busy trade period. Not quite as busy in the draft, but where do you see their fortunes at this draft, Kevin?
Interesting, a couple of boys from Gippsland Power there. One passed over by Hawthorn, the Next Generation Academy Mosquito, and they've picked him up small forward, a bit of Cyril about him.
Stolen from Hawthorn.
Yes, it is. And Gowan, of course, the ex-basketballer that had a brilliant year, won the best and fairest, so performance on the board. And then Ham, that was a 19-year-old that had a terrific year playing down there at the Geelong Falcons. So for their later picks, they've done very well with well-performed players.
Yeah, they've been to the draft a couple of years ago, didn't they, with Andy McGrath and Aaron Francis and the like, and then the last couple of years we've seen Adrian Dodoro do the bulk of his work through the trade period. So that's the balancing act in list management, is when you go to the draft, when you try and bring in some mature age talent. I think Irving Mosquito is a fantastic addition. When you look at that forward line, Orazio Fantasia, Tippin Woody, Jake Stringer, all of a sudden they're a pretty formidable group.
Sarah Ollie speaking to that man, Adrian Dodoro.
Now, Adrian, we have to talk about that fist pump.
Oh, no.
As soon as you saw that you were getting Irving Mosquito, the fist was pumped. Are you pumped?
Oh, look, we're very happy as a footy club. Obviously, when you come into the draft and it's late in the piece, you know, we just thought we'd pick a player that's got a lot of talent and a huge upside, and we think this young man has, and you know, it felt the cards fell away, and we're really happy.
People are saying he's a Cyril Rioli clone, which is, you know, big shoes to fill, but do you see him having those traits?
Oh, look, he's certainly a player with a lot of talent, and but we're not talking him up too soon. He's got a lot of work to do, and we're committed to helping him become the best player he can be, and we're sure he'll fulfil his potential.
Well, I'm sure Bombers fans are buzzing with the excitement, pardon the pun, but thank you very much for joining us, Adrian.
Thanks, Sarah.
Oh, very funny, Sarah. Excellent from you as always. The Dockers, led by Sam Sturt.
Yes, a surprise packet, I suppose. We go back to August, unheard of. He comes home with half a dozen games at Dandenong Stingrays after leaving cricket as his major sport to pursue footy and impress that much that he was on everyone's radar. Added to the national combine at the last minute. He then showed elite athletic ability at that combine and impressed everyone. No surprise then to see him go, but in July, not even heard of as a draft chance. So it can happen very, very quickly.
Yeah, great story. Great result for football. We've managed to pinch another cricketer, Tom, so very, very happy as a code. But I tend to look at Luke Valenti as well. They've got a fantastic character, really good person, someone that's going to come in. He'll play AFL football, there's no doubt about that. And when he can come in, he can add some real value from a character perspective to the group, gives them some depth on that list that I spoke about throughout the course of the draft, and he'll play an important role. But Sam Sturt certainly gives them that versatility up forward. May even increase some of the pressure on a Cam McCarthy type to get back to his top form.
Good competitive nature within the club. Let's have a listen to what Peter Bell had to say. He's with Sarah Ollie.
Well, Peter, you must have been licking your lips when you saw Luke Valenti still there at pick 31. What a steal. What is he going to bring to your club?
Well, first of all, he's an outstanding person, Sarah. School captain, captain of South Australia, and we know what a talented bunch of players they had this year as well. So, outstanding character and really good person, great family, ability to win the ball, kicks the ball well, both feet. And we think he's a player who's going to add to our group immensely.
Were you surprised to still see him available at that late pick?
Look, the draft always throws up some funny things, but we were really pleased that he was available there, so we couldn't get his name out quick enough.
And even though you recruited some great forwards in the trade period, you got Sam Sturt last night. What's he going to add?
Yeah, Sam's really exciting, untapped athletically, really quick, great vertical jump. He came to the attention of everyone quite late. Yes. He only came to the Stingrays halfway through the season, but we see him as being a bit of a project player, but with his athleticism could be forward, maybe even play back as well, so as an intercept sort of mark player, but we're really looking forward to having Sam as well.
Thanks for your time.
Anytime.
Well, Mick Ablett, I'm really interested in your thoughts on the Cats, because they only just got Oscar Brownless right towards the very end.
Yeah, I think the time's now for the Cats, isn't it? We saw that in that trade period where they were reluctant to give up Tim Kelly. So I think that's why they've been fortunate and they've been really pleased to get a guy like Jordan Clark who's had senior experience. He can come in, he'll play early. And then you look at Jarvis and Canurley, they're some of those real hybrid, flexible types that can obviously play multiple roles, which Geelong are known for doing. And Oscar Brownless, the late selection, great to see the Cats continue the family name. Yeah,
and then Darcy Ford, a boy that left the Geelong Falcons after not being drafted, went to Central Districts, had a terrific year there this year, 205-centimetre ruckman returning home. So they've got probably backup ruckman there with a few years' experience at senior level to help them out there.
Well, 6 players have joined the Cats either today or yesterday, and let's hear what Stephen Wells has to say about it. He's with Sarah Ollie.
Now, Stephen, you're being hailed as a genius yet again in getting Jordan Clark at pick 12, a steal. Got to be happy with that.
Oh, yeah, Jordan was a terrific pick for us. The whole recruiting team did a fantastic job in being prepared for whoever came through to us, and it was a tough decision, actually, who to pick. There was still some very good names there, but Jordan's numbers were compelling, and we're very, very pleased to be able to draft him this year.
And at the other end of the draft, we've got Oscar Brownless, another fantastic story, a father-son recruit. What's he going to bring to the Cats list?
So Oscar will bring to us some fantastic footy character. He's a very much different player to his father, but he can mark it really well. He's a hard-running player, not going to play as a key forward like his father did, but he'll play around the ground, bring terrific leadership to the group as well, and be a real good team member as part of the group.
And you've also bolstered your ruck stocks, I believe.
Yeah, so Darcy Ford is a player who played with the Geelong Falcons a number of years ago and has gone over and had a couple of really good years for Central Districts in South Australia, 204 centimetres. It was an area that we felt that we would be happy to call out, and Darcy's very excited about getting his chance at Geelong.
Oh, well, we're looking forward to seeing all those draftees hopefully getting their chance too. Stephen, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you to Sarah Ollie and Stephen Wells, again, doing a great job out there at Marvel Stadium. The Gold Coast Suns, they're in an interesting position. Talk us through their draft, Mick.
Well, have a look. They've got absolute once-in-a-generation type talent. Jack Lukosius and Isaac Rankin, Ben King. These are guys that don't come along every day of the week. So they've got the right players through the door. Let's just hope now that we can see in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time the pictures coming out of the Gold Coast Suns that we saw come out of the Brisbane Lions when Jared Berry's brother's name was called and there was the celebration and that unity within the group. But they've had an exceptional draft, the Gold Coast Suns.
Henley High School, choices 2 and 3 in the draft. Unbelievable. Just a normal
right?
state school over there in SA that's got 2 champions of our game anyway that have played some school footy. The boys have played some school footy together there at Henley High and then have been, household names in SA for the last 2 or 3 years through their performances at senior level, and now they're going to be known right across Australia as young stars of the AFL.
Well, something in the water over there at Henley High, maybe a few more kids out of there in future years. The Giants, Mick, again, an expansion club, probably at a different stage of their development to the Gold Coast Suns. How was their draft?
Outstanding. It really was. They went in there with a targeted approach of replenishing that midfield that lost Griffin and Scully, Dylan Shield and the like, and to get, as we see on the board there, Jai Caldwell had the injury interrupted year. Jackson Haley, who I think is one of the best midfield prospects in this year's draft, big, solid body. And then they pulled the surprise packet, Kev, with Xavier O'Halloran.
Yeah, and he's got the bloodlines. His grandfather, of course, played in a Footscray premiership side in 1954 with E.J. Whitten, Charlie Sutton and all of those. Ron McCarthy played across the wing, and Xavier talked about him very proudly, the fact that he would love to have been here to see this happen.
Well, another 6 players have joined the Giants, and I'm interested to hear what Adrian Caruso, the recruiting manager, has to say. He's with Sarah Ollie.
So, Adrian, you got some steals at this draft. Let's start with steal number 1 in Bobby. You've got to be happy with that result.
Yeah, we're rapt to get him where we did. He was obviously a player that we watched all year and were really keen on. And then when it fell our way with what we got last night, we prioritised trading up to get him this morning.
So that's obviously Ian, Bobby Hill. But what about Connor Iden, another steal for you guys?
Yeah, Connor was another one that we thought really complemented the mix of players that we brought in earlier. So when he was available and his name was sliding down the order, again, it was a priority for us to come in and get him.
And you've also bolstered your ruck stocks via the Academy product. Can you tell us a bit about Kieran Briggs? He's a big fella already.
He is. He's the bonus for us. He's a Western Sydney lad, and he fills a need for us in the ruck space. So he's the All-Australian ruckman from Western Sydney. It's an easy decision for us to match on that one, and we feel like we're really happy to, tick that box.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you to Sarah and Adrian Caruso. We've got 9 more clubs to get through, gentlemen. We'll be doing that right after this break, so stay with us on Fox Footy.
But only I know, nothing to lose, nothing to save to make a whole. What if I should make a loss? Hold up.
Welcome back to Fox Footy's coverage of the draft. There's an absolute ripper here today at Marvel Stadium. And we are at Fox Footy's headquarters with Mick Ablett and Kevin Sheen. You see, it's been a long 3 hours.
Been a long day, Tom.
But we've got through it and we're almost there. We've got 9 clubs still to review and see how their drafts went. Let's go to Hawthorn. They came into the draft with pick 52. What's your take?
Another Kaczynski in the AFL, hey? And it's a cousin, of course, of Justin. It's young Jacob, the All-Australian key defender. Love his size for a start. 196 centimetre boy that competes. His one-on-one stuff's excellent. His use of the ball on the way out, excellent. Had a great game on Ben King, who went so early in the draft, a top 10 choice in one of the national championship matches this year. So I think they've picked up a ready-to-run key defender in Kaczynski.
But they said no to Mosquito, Mick.
Yeah, they did. But they obviously valued someone like Matt Walker, who they took a little bit later, ahead of Irving Mosquito. So Matt Walker's probably the tease of the draft, I would say. Super talented, really, really good kid. But if he does get it together and he can really start to develop a tank that he had maybe a couple of years ago, he could be a very difficult matchup. You think a similar size to like a Jack Gunston.
Yeah, I seen him had a breakout game this year over in Tassie. So I looked for the one that really showed his absolute talent. Had a ripper game and the best 3 on the ground. And I thought Walker can play and make it at the AFL level. String the games together, the effort together, and you might well see a player. I think the Hawks have probably seen that in him.
And let's talk about another club who didn't have an impact until today rather than last night, and that's Melbourne. What's your take on Melbourne's draft? Because they didn't really get involved at all until a bit later, but then they certainly made their mark.
Yeah, well, Sparrow was the one that, like I mentioned throughout the broadcast, he was the one that there was talk he could potentially bolt. Very, very likely type. I think Melbourne are in a position where they've just added very, very nicely around the edges of what they've already got, which is that really solid core group of players. They bring in Marty Hoare, who's had an outstanding couple of years at VFL level for Collingwood, that might just help tip them over and get them into that grand final that they've been chasing so badly.
And James Jordan, the boy from Caulfield Grammar, and just, it was just the 7 matches at the Oakley Chargers late in the year that showed that he could be an AFL player. And Yarrawonga, I think 3 boys from Yarrawonga, that little country town on the Murray River, have got up today.
Brendan Vivola territory, Yarrawonga, and certainly good bloodlines down there. Jason Taylor from the Demons, he's speaking to Sarah Ollie.
Jason, so many feel-good stories today, but I love this one of Marty Hall. Can you tell us about this player from the VFL?
Yeah, Marty, he's now won 2 best and fairest at the Collingwood VFL. We obviously tracked him back in his under-18 year, Bendigo Pioneers, and he's really worked hard for his opportunity, and each year you see improvement in his game, and each year you see him really present as an athlete, like an AFL player, and we just felt that with that improvement, that dedication, that he's got the right stuff to make the next step, and we're thrilled to give him the opportunity just for the dedication and hard work he's put in.
I tell you what, it's going to be a well-stocked back line at the D's, but what about Toby Bedford, another great story for your club?
Absolutely, our first next-generation academy player, and Toby plays with the right spirit. He's got that real genuine speed, endurance and aggression in his game. He loves to tackle, and he's going to create some stuff in our forward line, and he's a beautiful kid, Toby, and real credit to Todd Patterson, who runs our Melbourne Academy, which is part of that, who's put in some good work with Toby and everyone at the football club in general.
Well, let's hope to see them both out there next year. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thanks, Sarah.
From Melbourne to North Melbourne, how do you rate the Kangaroos draft?
Yeah, well, they were another club that did a lot of their work early on, didn't they, through the trade period, but they bring in Taron Thomas. He's a star. He's an absolute star. I mentioned it last night that he's better in the wet than what he is in the dry, and I've never seen a player handle the ball in slippery conditions as well as what he does. They then add in Bailey Scott and Joel Crocker, another couple of father sons, and academy prospects coming from different types of areas, but look, they've had a very, very good draft and got some top-end talent through the door.
Yeah, and Curtis Taylor there at 46, who was one of the invited guests last night, and that's done on the basis of what the clubs as a collective tell you. And so many clubs rated him in the best 25, so to get him 20 choices later, they'll be wrapped in that one.
They will certainly think they've got a steal with Curtis Taylor. A number of father-sons and academy prospects, and North Melbourne was certainly very active. Let's talk about Port Adelaide now. How do you rate their draft period, Kevin? Do you think they've had a successful one?
Well, Connor Rosie, they'd be wrapped to keep him at home. He's the boy that emerged in the second half of the year after being a star in his 16th and 17th year. A little niggle during the Nationals just to stop him from being at his absolute best. But once he was right, he progressed to senior level and starred at senior level. I see him as an inside midfielder in the finish, but he's been learning the caper at half back, at half forward, but right in the middle with his quick hands and vision. He sets the play up, and I reckon he's still growing. He's got to 185 centimetres. I think he can be a dominant AFL player.
Well, for 2 years we listened to Jeff Parker complain about Jason Cripps taking his early picks away. You've got your wish, Parks, and you've done a fantastic job. I think they've replaced the Polek and Pittard and those sort of departures very, very quickly, and you'd expect Port Adelaide to remain in that upper echelon of the ladder in the near future. The Tigers, I was going to say the reigning premiers. They were the reigning premiers until about 2 months ago, but they're still clearly at the very apex of their form and the ladder as well. They'll be looking to win the flag next year. Their first pick was super impressive last night with a great story. How do you rate their draft, Kevin? And Collier Dawkins, you're talking about there. That's fantastic. As a boy that models his game on Paddy Cripps, and he's a big boy. He's got to 191 centimetre midfielder with pace. He's quite exciting. He knows how to free the hands like Cripps as well and feed the ball out. Grew the 8 centimetres in a year. I love those sorts of stories, and he's still got the ability below the knees of someone that's a bit smaller too. Very impressive young man, and then Ross, that was the best and fairest winner for the Oakley Chargers this year, prolific ball winner. Turner, the road runner, love the way he goes about it, and the tenacious English from WA. I reckon that's a great group. Effectively 4 midfielders as well, so they obviously like their bookends. They want some more run, Mick. Yeah, well, they were similar to GWS, weren't they? And the players that actually exited in that area of the ground, they had to replace those stocks, and that's exactly what they did. They've gone for the elite endurance runners that Kev mentioned. They've also gone for a couple of really good people, which I love, because the Tigers are now back up there. They'll be disappointed they missed out on a premiership in 2018. But don't worry, they've certainly got a couple of really, really good midfielders in this 2018 draft.
Okay, Sarah Ollie's speaking to newly appointed listed and recruiting manager at Punt Road. That's Matthew Clark.
All right, Matt, let's rewind to last night. Were you a bit thrown with the Carlton bombshell, and how did that affect your drafting?
Oh, we had a few players rated there, so it probably didn't throw us too much because we obviously just try and stick to your order, so you don't want to try and panic. But we had a few guys there, and we were really happy to get Riley at the end of the day.
And you lost a bit of midfield cover throughout the trade period. Is that something you tried to target during this draft?
Yeah, I mean, the 4 players that we picked, you see Riley and Jack Ross as big, strong mids, and then we've got Luke English late as a midfielder who can play inside and out, and Fraser Turner who plays wing and can really run. So, yeah, it gives us some really good midfield.
Well, hopefully those boys get an opportunity sooner rather than later. Thanks for joining us.
No worries, my pleasure.
Thank you to Sarah. Let's talk about the Saints now, because they need to lift in 2019. Are they going to be able to do it based off this draft and a very, very highly rated top draft pick there as well?
Well, Max King, if it was after round 1 when he kicked 8 goals from about 10 marks, he looked the number 1 choice way back then. The ACL stopped him. He's going to be a star, this boy. I remember in January watching him train at Melbourne. I was there with Luke Power. He's an academy boy that was training with the very best Melbourne players, taking contested marks against the best of them. And we thought we're looking at the number 1. Takes it at the highest point, and he's 204. You cannot stop him. So I look forward to seeing his development. We know the ACL is going to come good, and I reckon he's going to be a really exciting player. Jack Bytel, well, he's the boy that was hidden away because of injury. I think he's going to be a star contested ball winner through the midfield, so they'd be happy with their set, the Saints.
Yeah, I think there was a clear direction, which is great to see from the Saints. Everybody's questioning where they're at, where they're heading, what the plans are. We've seen them take 2 really talented young footballers and then look to add some mature age prospects on the back end to really give that support to a young up-and-coming group. So it's nice to see a direction from the Saints. It'll be great to see it unfold out on the ground in 2019.
Let's see how this interview unfolds. Sarah Ollie has Simon Lethlean.
Now, Simon, we have to start with pick 4. Was it always going to be Max King, or were you swaying either way with a few other selections?
No, we had a pretty thorough few weeks debating what was best for the club. Look, I think Max was going to be a number 1 pick, 8 or 9 months ago, so he was just too compelling to pass up on. But there were some pretty good players in that top 7 or 8 that would have been happy at any club. But no, Max is a great get for us.
Are there any names that you'd like to reveal that you were perhaps weighing up?
No, we got Max and we're happy.
Well, he seems like a great kid, but it also looks like the Saints have taken a slightly different role with some mature ages coming through.
Yeah, we've got the second youngest list in the competition, so we were keen to get Max, and we grabbed Jack Bytel pretty fast, being available where he was, which was we were ecstatic with. We wanted to add some mature age players then, but also some pace. So we targeted Matthew Parker and Robbie Young and Nick Hind and got all 3, which adds great pace but some good seniority to their 23, 24-year-olds that we think play senior footy next year, which is what we need in a young team.
And on players playing senior footy next year, do you think Max will be up to that?
Look, Max will take till about May, I think, to play his footy. We expect he'll play 15 games thereafter, but he'll start off at Sandringham and learn the trade, and he's got 15 years of footy to play with us, so we'll get him in the right frame of mind, the right body, and see how he goes.
I'm sure Saints fans can't wait to see him, so hopefully it's sooner than later. Thank you very much, Simon.
Thanks for having us. Cheers.
Well, the Sydney Swans, they've got their own ways of going about things. They've got an inside midfielder at the start, then a collection of runners as well. How do you rate what they did this draft period?
Oh, there was a lot of discussion last night, wasn't there, around how the Nick Blakey scenario unfolded. I say full credit to the Sydney Swans. Congratulations, you've got a star. You got him at a fantastic price, and Kinnear Beatson should be given full credit for that. You look down, obviously, Rowbottom, we spoke about him, we spoke about his pace, his ability to play multiple roles. He'll push up at some stage through the midfield. And Zach Foote, Kev, who we all know has got that elite speed-endurance combination.
Yeah, fleet of foot is he, and as is McInerney, fleet of foot. So a couple of runners there with 44 and 51. They'll be happy with that set.
Let's go west. Mick, what are your thoughts on the Eagles? You know these kids very closely, and clearly the Eagles have got a point to prove as well, because they have 4 ruckmen on their senior list now.
Yeah, Bailey Williams is the one. It was interesting discussing this with the Dandenong Stingrays coach Craig Black and others. You just felt he was really suited to that football club in his ability to cover the ground and work alongside a guy like Nick Natanui. Luke Foley is an absolute steal for the West Coast Eagles. He's going to play inside, outside. He runs in the mould of like an Andrew Gaff. He's that really hard-working, can really push and break lines. So I think they've done really well. And again, I mentioned it earlier, they got one of the strongest lists in the AFL.
And Xavier O'Neill from the Oakley Chargers, where Luke Shuey comes from. People forget that the West Coast Eagles are prepared to look everywhere for their talent and take the boys out of Victoria, ensure that they're happy at their football club and they can become stars of their club as well. And Xavier O'Neill following Luke Shuey to the West Coast.
And haven't the Oakley Chargers had an unbelievable national draft as well? Lots of talent coming out there all across the country. Brady Rawlings, he's speaking to Sarah Ollie.
Now, Brady, we had David Noble on before and he was saying you're a bit of a party pooper with the Jared Cameron selection, but we know you've put a lot of time into him. Can you tell us what he's like?
Yeah, Jared's an exciting little player. He's a pressure forward that can take his opportunities, and we saw some real growth in him this year and through our program as well. So, yeah, obviously Brisbane with the Charlie connection rated him quite highly as well, and if he got past a certain point, we were going to match the bid.
Did you see him slotting straight into the forward line next year? It's going to be pretty dangerous with another small forward.
Yeah, well, who knows? Once the players get into the club and they start their pre-season, and there's a lot of competition for spots when you come up against man, and clearly had a reasonable year as well this year. So, yeah, anyone's a chance to come in and play, but yeah, there's no expectations to play early.
Well, he's got an amazing highlights reel, so fingers crossed we see him soon. Thank you very much for your time.
No worries, thank you.
The Western Bulldogs now, to wrap up the clubs. We've gone through 17, and this is the 18th club. What are your thoughts on the Dogs? Riley West, they managed to pick up their man, Kevin.
They'll be happy with that. The son of a gun. We say that sometimes and we just throw it as a throwaway line. This is genuinely the son of a gun. Scotty West, a super player for so long, to win 7 best and fairest. Now, Riley's a competitive beast, a hard edge on him, prolific ball winner. Played a great game against the big bodies too. During the year, the underage boys play a VFL opponent. It was North Melbourne this year. They had 15 listed players. He was in the best 2 or 3 on the ground. He loved the contest against those players to prove that he could one day match it with them. So that was the benchmark game for he, and he had a great year, All-Australian as well. So they've got another boy back to the kennel.
I reckon you like him a lot. I can sort of tell Kevin really likes Riley West. What are your thoughts on the Dogs national draft, Mick?
Yeah, they got their man Bailey Smith, didn't they? They got him early. A lot of talk around prior to the draft that he didn't want to leave Victoria. Well, he got his wish as well, so they've got an outstanding midfielder who can really run other opposition teams into the ground. They've also looked at Ben Cavara, who's that small forward. He could potentially pinch hit through the midfield, a guy that's done the hard yards, been at Williamstown, he's been at the Frankston Dolphins, so fantastic to see Ben Cavara get an opportunity. And I just want to see the Bulldogs establish themselves again and get back to their winning ways of what we saw a couple of seasons ago. OK, I'm going to put you both under the pump very quickly before we wrap up. I want your best and your second best clubs at this national draft. Let's start with your second best club, Kevin.
My second best was Port Adelaide. Challenged because they had 3 in the top 16. They had to have a good draft. Very happy with the collection of players they got. My very best are the Gold Coast Suns. This is a big draft. When they have 3 picks in the top half a dozen, they've picked some stars there, and they're going to have to nurture these boys, but they've got great elite talent. So I think it's been a successful couple of days for those 2 clubs.
What about your top 2, Mick?
I'm going GWS number 1. Yeah. I think to get Ian Hill where they got him, he's a bona fide star, but to also bring in Jackson Haitley and Jai Caldwell, their midfield, Jesus, it just goes from strength to strength. You see guys transition out. They're clearly planning for the future and expecting, potentially a couple of other players to go. So I think they've had an outstanding draft. And I'm with Kev. The Gold Coast Suns, I thought, their ability to get Lukosius, Rankin and Ben King through the door. You're talking players that are setting clubs up for a very, very long period of time.
There's lots of clubs nailing players at the moment, which is good to see, but we'll have to wait and see about a decade before we can look back and go, yes, this has been best or this has been not quite as good. Hey, the cricket is on tonight. It's at the MCG, Channel 501, Fox Cricket, Australia versus India from 6:15. Make sure you tune into that. It is an unbelievable setup we've got on Fox Cricket, and you'd be rude to miss it because it will be a ripper game. Big crowd expected at the MCG tonight, so do not miss that game. Kevin, you've been awesome today as always. You are a wealth of knowledge. Thanks very much for jumping on.
Great to be here, and good luck to all the boys who made the grade.
And Mick, as always, you are a wealth of knowledge. And you certainly know your stuff, so thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, been fantastic, Tom, and all the best to the boys in the rookie draft this afternoon also.
Good, well, we hope you've enjoyed the coverage of the 2018 NAB AFL draft yesterday and then this afternoon. Remember to keep clicking back to foxfooty.com.au for all your draft wrap-up and all your news throughout the summer and into the 2019 season. Thanks very much.